In Creole, they would say Dubai.
Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Duren. I always wanted to do that. I never get a chance.
I always wanted you to do it, man.
My man. And you brought your friend, Nathan Ihde. Both of you guys escaped the winter of Wisconsin, which I'm representing right now.
Yeah.
Hunt to Eat t-shirt. And Meateater and Giannis Putelis, this is their company, and Meateater sent me a code for people if you want to use this. If you go to hunttoeat.com, and I think the code word is just Joe Rogan, all in one word. I'm going to find it in 1 second. And if you do that, I think you get 10% off. Hold on a second. I'll find that real quick. Yeah, Joe Rogan, all caps, 10% off. Hunt to Eat. And it's what is, some of them are license plates. This one's the Wisconsin one. It's just a circle. It shows the state, little deer in it.
Little deer tracks around it. Yeah.
Our friends, their company. And
great guys, man.
The best.
They really
nicest
are.
people. They work for Steve Rinella at Meateater, and we know them well. Doug Duren, of course, is my friend from Wisconsin, and he brought his friend Nathan.
Ihde.
And we're gonna talk about some stuff. And well, it's just good to see you anyway. But we're also gonna talk about this one thing that came out today that I tweeted that they found that there's a huge difference. Not just a little difference, because people have always wondered, like, does it matter if you buy grass-fed food? Does it matter if you buy, I mean, what does it really matter? Well, apparently it does. There's a new study that found clear differences between organic and non-organic meat and milk. And this is the largest study of its kind. An international team of experts led by Newcastle University in the UK has shown that both organic milk and organic meat contain around 50% more beneficial omega-3 fatty acids than conventionally produced products, which is pretty fascinating because a lot of people have speculated that it's all BS, that you go and you buy grass-fed this or grass-fed that. It doesn't mean anything, but it means a lot.
Well, you know what's interesting to me about it is so much of it for me is intuitive. I grew up with cattle, and it makes sense that a ruminant, a cow, it eats grass. You know, that's what it eats. And you start putting all this other stuff into it, for instance, corn, soybeans, and that sort of thing. That's not what they were made to eat. And so then you take that a step further and have it be, I think they're referring in this to organic, that they're talking about grass-fed.
Yes.
And so they're eating what they're supposed to eat, not what we somehow along the way decided, well, this is what they're going to eat, corn or soybeans, because they'll put on that fat that we all like so much.
Well, speeds up the process.
Yeah, it does. It speeds up the maturing process of the animal, but not in a good way necessarily.
No.
You know?
It does so many bad things.
Yeah, it makes so much sense to me that from a common sense level, that this is going to be the best thing for the animal, and then down the way, it's going to be the best thing for us. We're not forcing stuff on that animal that they wouldn't, normally be eating. They aren't going to eat it by choice. But I will tell you, if the cows, they're not the ones that I had when you were out there. But if I go out with the cattle that I have now that I bought about a year ago, I bang 2 buckets together and they come running.
Because they know the food's coming.
Well, because they used to be fed corn.
Oh, so these are animals that you purchased.
Yeah.
That were already at maturity?
Yeah, they were bred cows. So I was looking to get those cattle that I had when you were there, or that we had when you were there, I sold. We had a drought year, and hay prices went through the roof, and I had a barn and shed full of hay, which was pretty valuable, and the cattle were still pretty valuable. So I was able to sell those and then take the winter off and spent some time in Mexico and whatnot because I didn't have to feed cattle. But and then decided to get back into the game. So now I've got a herd of Herefords that I bought last year.
A herd of what?
Herefords.
What's a Hereford?
Hereford is a breed that I think originated in Britain, and whiteface red animal. So a lot of the ones that we had when you were there the last time were actually a Hereford cross. So they were a Hereford originally, or their original brood cows were Herefords, and then we bred them to like a black Angus or a red Angus crossbred to get some hybrid vigor out of them and that sort of thing. Or
what is the difference?
What's the difference of
between different styles of cows or different breeds of cows?
Wow, everything from how they put on weight to how they look to in the what
efficiency.
The
Efficiency
efficiency of how
thing.
they'll put weight on. If they're dairy cattle, some of the like Guernseys and Jerseys and that sort of thing, they won't produce as much milk, but it'll have a real high butterfat content.
So that's fascinating. With the same food, so with the same feeding them the same thing, different cows produce different butterfats.
Yeah. So Holsteins, which is the sort of the traditional dairy cow, big black and white thing. You've seen them on everything. They're a big animal, big bone, really tall, big animal. And they sort of have the ability to kind of eat. They're not as picky eater. They produce a lot of milk, but it'll have a lower butterfat. I can't believe I'm talking about dairy. I mean, I've been out of the dairy business since 1988, but
well, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah,
most people
really,
have no idea.
Yeah,
and
right.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
that different cows will produce a different level of dairy fat.
Oh no, that's exactly right. And then butterfat is what a farmer is paid on. So 100 pounds, which is about 8 pounds to the gallon, and in milk you're paid by the pound. 100 pounds of 3.5% butterfat, for instance, is not worth as much as 100 pounds of 4.5% butterfat. So there's this whole calibration system they use to do that. So, milk's being tested all the time, both organic grass-fed, managed pasture raised, and, more modern, if you will, the confined animal facilities where they're, milking, 1,000 cows in a real small area, and very, confining them in a very small area. Where Nate and I both grew up, and you saw our farm, a lot of pasture, fields, that sort of thing. So the cattle are kind of walking around doing their thing out on pasture. They come in the evening, you'd feed them, sort of a supplement of it might be grain or it might be hay, it might be these various things. And it kind of depended, and that all evolved over time, and in my lifetime. And you were always sort of aiming to get the most out of each one of those animals. And depending on how you looked at the science, people spent their whole lives studying how to get the most out of a cow. Depending on how you looked at that science, you made decisions about that. Well, when I was a kid, there was a lot more of, and I mean a kid like in the 60s, in the early 60s, there was a lot more common sense involved. And now it's much more like in those big milking operations, that sort of thing, it's more science. It's like, here's how we can get the most out of them.
So you remember this shift between what was like normal farming, normal dairy farming, normal meat cow farming, to this thing that we're seeing now that most people have a real big problem with, this factory farming installations where you have these cows jammed into these warehouses, and chickens, and the same thing with pigs. And those are the things that people have a real issue with when they see them on television, they see YouTube videos. Do you remember this shift?
Oh, God, yeah. So I'm 57 years old. I was born in 1959. By the time I was old enough to drive a tractor, which is when you're about 4 years old where I'm from.
You were driving a tractor at 4?
Well, you're sitting there steering it anyway, and going through the field, and they're
Powerful,
picking up.
Wisconsin.
I was 6. I was 6 when I jumped on.
So do you remember this?
Oh yeah. And so when I was a kid, do you remember where we shot where we had that shooting range set up by my house? That little kind of was an old foundation there. That was a chicken coop.
Oh, okay.
We had chickens there. There was a granary in between. The little building that we fondly call the keep out shed now, because it's the security there. It just says keep out on the door. That was a facility where we raised pigs. And then we had a rolling herd of about 40 milk cows, and they were Holsteins. And so it was a diverse farm, it was a diverse ecosystem, if you will. And I don't know, during the Nixon administration, Earl Butz, who was the Secretary of Agriculture then, came out and said, get big or get out. And that was really the beginning of the end of the small family farm.
What do you mean? Like he said this? Like, was it a statement on
It was
on
a
television?
statement.
Or like what? How did this go down?
Boy, I'm sure it could be found somewhere, but get bigger. I mean, that's just the.
It was like a part campaign?
It was a press conference or something to that effect. That was going to be the move in agriculture. And
it was a long process. I mean, I remember our exit, if you will, from the dairy sector. Ours came in the late 90s, so there was a big shift. Just for example, my grandfather was running the farm in 1977, and the milk price was like $14 or $15 per hundredweight. When my dad was forced to sell in, I think it was 98 or 99, it was like $9. So you're trying to raise a family and continue a legacy, and you're getting paid dirt. So
what caused that shift?
Big agriculture.
Yeah, it was systematic. It was a systematic shift to the corporate.
And there's some sense. I want to say there's some sense in it, but that's probably not a completely. I mean, you understand that efficiency getting. It's the American way. You get bigger. You get there's efficiencies in scale.
But what I'm trying to understand, like, what was the motivation? Was it that populations were booming because there's a lot more people today?
Yeah.
I think we looked at it up the other day. I think in 1970 there was something like 150 million people in this country. Now there's 300 million.
Yeah.
That's not that long ago. I mean, that's in my lifetime, and that's crazy. That's crazy that the population's doubled, and the demand for food obviously doubled as well.
Something that's really interesting, if you look at that area where you came out and visited, the exact opposite has happened in population there. There's half as many people in our area as there were when
and
I
it's
was
a farm area.
And it's a farm area.
So the small farm, the family farm, is what's really suffering because it's so hard to make ends meet with these gigantic operations that are just.
Yeah.
Is that?
Well, they can. I mean, it makes sense. On a business scale, you can afford to sell a product cheaper if you're doing it bigger, but the things you lose there are the quality and the sustainability and environmental impact of the process. You got these big farms where basically they make more product, but they also make more shit.
Yeah.
And that's a water issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a big part of that documentary Cowspiracy, where they were trying to talk about the methane that's produced by cows, the methane, and just getting rid of the actual cow shit itself. Like, you're talking about massive, massive quantities.
Well, and when I was younger, and even now, the manure that's produced on our farm, like now in the winter, I'm feeding hay, and they're confined would be a little kind of a strong word. They stay around where the hay is, and we've got fresh water there for them, and it's spring water, and I can talk about that later. But they stay in that area, and so that's where they're, shitting, and so I end up piling that stuff up. And I pile it up and I compost it, and I put it on everything from a community garden nearby to our fields to people want to come by and say, "Hey, man, can I get a load of shit?" And sure as heck, I give it to them. Whereas for a big facility, it's where do we get rid of this shit?
Right. Yeah. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this is because I think that. Most of us, when I say us, like people that live in cities, have almost no idea of how all this stuff works. And when people examine it, or they try to watch a documentary on it, or try to figure out like how cows are raised, one of the things we get confused about is stop playing with that thing, man. We get confused about is how did it happen? Like, how did these things become these gigantic sort of operations where it seems so inhumane?
Well, it's a business model. It's a business model like corporations, like banks, like everything. It's the same idea. Interestingly, to me, in our area, and Nate and some of the folks that he knows are an example, and I am to a lesser extent, because it's just a little bit different on our farm. It's not something where I'm trying to make a living at it, that it's starting to go the other. It very much has gone the other way. Things like community-supported agriculture and those sort of things are happening. That people want to know their farmer.
Right. So there's like a blowback. So people are realizing that there's something kind of crazy about these factory farming setups, and so now they're trying to get their meat more from organic farms. But how much more expensive is it, say, like with one of your farms?
I sell bulk, and I consider bulk anything over 50 pounds. for $6.50 a pound.
So like a family could come to you and buy directly?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And do you sell most of your stuff directly, or do you sell it to like a wholesaler, or
Well,
how does that work?
What I try to do is, and my whole goal with my meat production, I mean, we do a lot of other things we'll maybe get into later, but the meat production, I try to take care of a certain amount of families, and when they need meat, I have it. I don't market it. I mean, it's all, I have customers and they come to me when they want meat.
So it's like a word of mouth type thing?
Yeah, and some people buy a quarter, which is like 100 to 150 pounds sometimes. And some people will come and buy 20 pounds when they need it,
Now, I have a buddy who is a fireman who does that. He has like a deal with a local rancher, and he buys like him and a couple of the families that he's friends with. They'll go in on like a side of beef. They'll go in on like a whole half of a cow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they save money that way, and then they know they're getting like real organic grass-fed cows, like with that nice yellow fat.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I have to tell you this story. Some years ago, when we were raising beef, one of the things that I did for my ex-wife and I did for my brother and sister-in-law was gave them a quarter of a beef for Christmas. And I thought I was being real clever. The steers at that time kind of all had the same name. The heifer calves, the female calves, I give them different names or different numbers and everything because we keep them around. But the steers all had the same name, and that was Dinner.
And a steer, for people who don't know, is a cow that has its balls removed, a male
that's
cow.
Right. So eunuch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good reasons for doing that. And just so nobody says, so you're knocking this thing down and cutting its nuts off? Well, yeah, that is what we're doing. But when we knock it down, we actually sedate it. It goes to sleep. It wakes up and it's singing soprano. I mean, that's how that works. And
they jerk a little bit though when you.
Well, yeah, you were too.
Yeah,
I don't care whether
I would imagine.
I don't care whether you're sedated or not.
Right.
But so yeah, that is what a steer is. So, I'm sorry. The story was that so we gave Sarah and Art this quarter of beef, and we were making a presentation of it, and they had the neighbors over, and so everybody's sitting around the table, and there's a couple of girls, young women, maybe 10 and 14, something like that. I don't remember their exact ages, but I had this Polaroid picture of that steer and said, and I had it in quotations, Dinner, and I made a presentation of, well, we gave you this meat, and here's this wonderful steak that we're having and everything, and here's the before and here's the after. Apparently, I turned one of those girls into a vegetarian that night. And I felt horrible about it.
Well, you've been there from the beginning, from the time you're really young. You've been there from, it's a part of your life,
yeah.
Right? You've always been around cows. You've always been around cattle.
Yeah.
It seems totally normal to you. But to somebody that just is used to going to the supermarket and buying a steak that comes neatly wrapped in saran wrap on a nice little foam tray, you're kind of freaking them out with reality. And
I learned something that day about it. But some of the folks that buy meat from me, they come out and they take a look at the place. And, you've been there, not maybe the nicest time of the year because it was cold and all of that. And the cattle weren't out on pasture. We had them confined in the barnyard. And they're out walking around. They're laying on the hillside. They're chewing their cud. Man, they're just happy as they can be. And they're looking at me and they're looking at the cattle. And so I'm going to have some of that meat. And it's just like there's that connection. If I don't get anything else across here during this conversation, I'd encourage people to know their farmer, know the guy who's raising that, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Vegetables or meat or whatever for them.
Well, it's very difficult for someone who is not used to the idea of an animal being alive and then being dead and then cut up and then portioned into steaks and then cooking it. People that are used to going to the supermarket and buying it already done for them, to be sort of forced to look at that whole process as an adult is a little disconcerting for a lot of people because we're faced with this very convenient world where we're completely detached from any of this stuff. Now, as a guy who's been around it your whole life, that's got to be kind of frustrating when you see the hypocrisy of people who eat the meat but really kind of don't want to know where it came from.
Yeah, hypocrisy is the only sin, in my world. It's kind of the way I feel about it. But I don't know necessarily that's a hypocrisy as much as it's just ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to say I don't take it lightly at all. When we load up a cow or a steer or whatever, I put them on there, man. It's just like when we shoot wildlife, we kill wildlife, something like that. We did a thing, or you're doing this is a big thing.
There's a reverence. A reverence for
there
it.
is a reverence. That's exactly the right word, Nate. There's a reverence to it that you have in these smaller situations. I mean, I could see where if I had 500 steers that I'm raising to 1,250 pounds, I might not have the same reverence to those animals. But they're giving me something. And I'm taking it from them, but that's my deal,
Well, that's similar. The similar argument when you're talking about large populations of people, that there's sort of this diffusion of responsibility that comes with interacting with 20 million people versus 20 people. When you're around 20 people, you have a town of 20 people, you know everybody, and the relationships are kind of important. Whereas 20 million people, you give the finger to somebody on the road. What's the idea? You're not going to see them again.
Yeah.
You hope not, right?
Right.
You hope not.
But if you're in Casanova and you see that dickhead down the street from you that leaves the nasty voicemail messages,
you'll never forget that.
I'll never forget that one. That fucking guy is crazy. You played that for us. That was seared into our head. But that you're forced into a relationship with that person, and you have to manage that relationship.
Yeah.
When you have how many cows you have now?
I have 20 head running around.
Yeah, so if you have 20 cows, like when you have to, and even when you do the deed, you're really not saying I have to kill this cow, but you're saying when we load one up, when we do the deed, there's all these euphemisms for what you're doing. You're going to kill this cow.
Yeah,
it's like maybe that's because of the fact that there's so many of them, but rather there's so few of them that you have this. This is it's a big moment.
It is a big moment. I sold a cow this fall that, through no fault of her own, had a prolapse cervix. And if you want to know what that is, essentially her cervix pushed out, and no matter how many times you push it back in and sew things up, she's going to continue to push. So she's not going to be productive, and her productivity is to have calves. And I felt terrible about it. Didn't mean I didn't do it. I mean, I knew.
You mean do it? Mean kill her?
Well, I didn't kill her, but yeah, I mean, I put
somebody
her on
else do it.
Well, yeah, and I'm not passing that responsibility off to somebody else from the standpoint of, well, I don't want to do it, so I have somebody else do it. I'll do it when it needs to be done. But when we're Nate and I both are selling, you're selling meat to people. There's regulations that go along with it. I mean, I can't just drop a cow in the barn, in the driveway of the barn, hang her up, cut her up, and start selling Joe Rogan meat. There's USDA inspection and all that. So we both send our animals to very small, family-run slaughterhouses, butcher shops, and they. So
you don't necessarily kill them yourself?
No.
Never.
No. Oh, if something.
If you were doing one for yourself, you would.
Yep. Yeah. And have.
So if you want to sell it, then you have to go through these
and
USDA slaughter.
You have to have a stamp and the inspection.
Yeah, and there's a standard to that. Now, I would confidently never sell you any of my beef if I butchered it myself, but I would confidently give it to you and say this is you've seen how we do it out there.
So this is basically just government regulations that you have to follow.
Yeah, but there's a standardization, and I'm down with that.
There's a pretty cool movement going on. The place I go to is called Driftless Meats in Viroqua, and it's a really, when they bring in a cow, one of the big problems with these slaughterhouses, Joe, is a lot of them you bring your cow in the night before, and there's who knows how many cows jammed into a pen, and they're stressed out, they're rutting around, bumping each other. These guys up there, I think the max they take in on a slaughter day is 4. And so these cows got their own pen. It's very stress-free. It's very relaxed. So the process, and that's what's so important about all of this and the sustainability and environmental impact, it's all about the process. It's fortunately there's a really strong movement in that sector of the processing is going on, Conscious Carnivore is a place near us.
facility near us, and I think that's a very important way of putting it. The guys from Cowspiracy, there was a lot. I agreed with those guys.
Me too. Yeah. Yep. That's what I think is unfortunate about the exaggerations of some of their claims, because I think that if they just stuck with what's absolute and reality, it's very disturbing. The sustainability doesn't look good, but what's interesting is, look, here's some things that you disagree with strongly. It's one of the reasons why we got into this conversation. One thing, the amount of acreage that it takes to grow a cow, to raise a cow.
I've been looking at my own cattle, but then also spending some time with our UW Extension. It's the ag people through our university, Land Grant University. 1.4
acres.
1.4 to 14, depending on how.
Yeah, that's a big difference,
and that's a huge difference.
Yeah. Well,
these guys were saying 50 acres.
No one agrees with that. I've gone
in certain
online.
Places, it probably is, though.
Well, it could have to be like desert.
But wasn't that guy?
And
the
why
guy
we
they said
raising...
was from Wisconsin, was from South Dakota. Didn't you tell me?
Yeah,
that?
there was. He made a reference on this, and I don't want to pick all their numbers apart.
Well,
or anything.
they're not ranchers, so I think what happens is someone told them that sounds great. They went with it.
Yeah.
And this is like, look, they made a great documentary, but when you make a documentary, you also have a great responsibility. Like, they have an agenda. It's very clear. Their agenda is to promote veganism. Mm-hmm. It's because they feel very strongly about it. Whether you agree with it or whether you don't agree with it, that's their point of view. That's what they're trying to get through in this documentary, is that if you just grow vegetables and you live off vegetables, you don't need as many acres. You could feed more people, and it's a healthier way to do it. That's just their perspective and their point of view. Right. So they sort of they lean towards that in a very strong way, while highlighting some irrefutable facts that are very disturbing.
And that's the shame of it, is because, they're environmentalists too. That's obvious. But it kind of put off the vibe that people like Doug and I aren't. And that's the problem is you look at the big corporations that are feeding off of all this misinformation, really. And
what do you mean by the big corporations that are feeding off?
Well, you talk about the big farms. You could talk about it in any industry. It's kind of a disjointed effort. You got these guys talking about this. You got these guys talking about this. We're all concerned about the environment, but some of this stuff came off as an attack on, beef production, cattle, livestock production. But we all agree on certain things. I think if you really want to focus and you want to make a change in the world, you find a way to work together.
Yeah, but their changes don't eat animals.
Oh, I know.
Don't kill animals.
So you got to compromise.
But they don't want to compromise.
They're not interested in compromise.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, there's very strong connections between veganism and religion. And if you look at a lot of their ideologies, they're very similar in a lot of ways to religious zealots. Like they have these ideas, they want to promote them, that and only that, and this is the way they want to go about it. And some of them say crazy shit. Like, I've had these conversations with people on Twitter. This guy was saying that human beings are not meant to eat meat. We're herbivores. I'm like, well, that's just not fucking true.
Show them your teeth, Doug.
Well, not only, but forget about the canine teeth. That's absolutely true. But how about the fact that scientists have done very clear studies on ancient humans, and the reason why we became human in the first place is the consumption of meat. It literally changed the amount of brain tissue we have. And then hunting changed how crafty people had to be. Mm-hmm. It changed the innovation of these lower primates, these lower hominids. They had to innovate. They had to figure out tools. They had to figure out weapons, not just to defend themselves from humans, but in order to hunt animals. This is an irrefutable fact.
Essential part of evolution, yeah.
It is. So I think, if I could speak for them, if I would play the devil's advocate, their point of view is, now we have evolved to a point where we don't need to do this anymore. We don't need meat anymore. We're very intelligent. We're also aware. We're also faced with this overwhelming amount of evidence, this overwhelming amount of information that we have now because of the internet, because of our access to it, we've never had before. So you can look at some of the statistics and some of the things they brought up, and you could say, well, this is their argument for promoting a vegan lifestyle. See, I can go with that. It's what the problem is that a lot of these guys, they say things like human beings can't process meat. Or we had this guy that Rob Wolf was arguing on Twitter who said animal fat is toxic. Well, what the fuck are you talking about? How do Inuits live?
Yeah.
How they've been around forever? They just eat nothing but fat.
Yeah.
These fucking people, and if you look at their diet and you look at what their diseases, the only fucking Inuits that are getting cancer are the ones that are smoking cigarettes. That's true. Yeah. It's our nasty fucking Western habit that we've passed up to these poor people. That's how they're getting cancer, and they're getting cancer in higher numbers than they ever have before because they weren't getting it before at all.
Right.
These people were eating blubber and fat and seals and whatever fish they could get, and they can't grow a goddamn single vegetable, and they weren't getting cancer.
The cancer thing, that's a great issue because recently, I don't know if you've caught the whole red meat and cancer thing, and they came out and they said, definitely your smoked meats and your cured meats. Like our meats aren't cured. It's
what do you mean by cured? Let's talk
is
about what you're talking about.
Like sodium nitrite, like when you make
yes,
bacon.
right.
Like if you took a package of my bacon and looked at the label, I think there's 3 or 4 ingredients in mine. You look at
what are those ingredients?
Water, pork. And it's like celery salt,
Right, which is how it should be.
Yeah. So
the problem is your bacon, if you sat on a shelf next to Oscar Mayer bacon, if you put them both on the same shelf and sat for a week, Oscar Mayer would look the same. Yours would start to fall apart.
Mine would need to be frozen.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
It's fucking normal.
Right.
Like, why do we think flesh is just going to sit around and not fall apart at 39 degrees or whatever your refrigerator is? It's not going to. That's not how it goes.
And so the cancer thing, and I get that, that stuff probably is linked to cancer, but they've pulled back on the red meat in general. They're not sure about it. But the thing is, and I think the study is skewed because you talk about cancer and pH, okay? Grass-fed beef has a neutral pH. Corn-fed, grain-fed beef, that pH goes up. And we know that cancer thrives in an acidic environment, and there's other things. The cows that have high acid guts, basically, is what it is. They're more prone to acidosis, which needs more medication. You need antibiotics. And it's also a prime harbor for E. coli. I'll find a stat for you, but the E. coli, I think it was 6,300,000 milligrams per. I'll look that up. I'll chime back in. You guys talk. That's an important.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, look that up. But that's a very important point I think you're making about how these animals that are unhealthy. It's kind of unhealthy to eat an unhealthy animal. That seems logical.
That is
one of the points that I found really interesting about the documentary was how these guys spoke about cattle aren't intended to eat, and I couldn't agree with more. And
corn,
that was corn and soybeans. Couldn't agree with more. That's why mine eat grass, and right now they're eating
And
hay.
yours tastes very different, by the way. You gave me a couple ribeyes last time. I took them home. They were damn delicious and lean and a nice dark red meat.
Yeah.
And that's how a cow's supposed to be. When you get these cows, when you get beef from a store, you're getting this really light red meat. It's very light, almost like a pinkish meat. And you compare that to like one of the elk steaks I have in back. Those elk steaks are like a red, like a dark, almost like a purple. It's just fucking overflowing with testosterone and elk cum or whatever the hell they got in their bodies. I mean, that's a healthy animal.
Well, that's exactly right. And that animal is choosing to eat. An elk is choosing. Well, it's obviously a product of its environment, so it's eating what's available, just like a white-tailed deer is. I remember when you and Brian were out, and I think Brian held up one of the backstrap steaks and he goes, "Oh my God, this is like sashimi grade.
Nothing better.
Tuna.
Nothing better.
Oh my God!
And
when we cooked that on your kitchen, oh my God, we just butter, salt, and garlic. And we grilled up some of those, and we were all eating them going, good Lord. And it was from an animal that you shot, 3 hours ago?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, you talk about fresh.
Oh, my God.
I do have that count there. It is...
Remember, he's my numbers guy.
Are you ready?
He brought Nathan here to know the flight information, what's the hotel room, what time's the podcast
and I'm going to hell with this. This is fun, Doug, but come on, I've got a family back home. So now we're talking cells per gram of meat. Okay. So in your grain-fed, the count of E. coli, the grain-fed and the count of E. coli, 6,300,000 cells per gram. In the grass-fed, 20,000.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And it's all about the environment that you're creating by what you're putting into this thing. It's unnatural.
That is crazy.
It's unnatural.
That is crazy.
Crazy numbers.
Wow.
And so these guys, and I, you know what? I'd love to have them come to the farm and talk to me. And just
I don't think they want to be around your house of murder.
Dougie Doug.
Doug Duren House of Murder. Well, take them out around Thanksgiving. Yeah. Right around opening day, and they can hear the fucking war zone.
we grow veggies too, you know.
Where Doug lives, opening day, like in the morning, when we were out in the blind, and as soon as the sun starts peeking up over the horizon, you hear boom, boom. You hear it off in the distance. I'm like, dude, are we at war? Why is there a picture of me? That's gross. I was asleep.
I don't know, man. I kind of like it.
Thank you very much.
I'm sharing a room with this guy.
Yeah. That was a weird experience. It was the first time I'd ever been like when I had gone hunting before. Before that time, it had only been in the wild in Missouri, in the breaks where there was no people.
Breaks, yeah.
When we were in your area in Casanova, it's like everybody is so geared up for it. When we stopped at that sporting goods store and got tags and got some equipment, like everybody was roaring, ready to go. Like tomorrow was like the opening day of a race.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah. A deer per second opening day in Wisconsin is shot. Deer per second.
Well, that's a testament to how many there are.
Well, yeah, we read a statistic about Minnesota about how many car accidents are in Minnesota. Was it Michigan? Michigan has 100,000 car accidents a year from people hitting deer. Just stop for a second, ladies and gentlemen, and you tell me you don't think they need to kill some fucking deer. There's 100,000 a year. I'm pretty sure that's the number. I should probably be careful if I keep repeating it over.
There's
and over
a lot.
Again. There's a
lot.
That's it.
Of
There's
deer.
more than 5
right.
a year. What's the number? 50,000. Damn it! I was so close. 80% of these crashes occur on 2-lane roads between dusk and dawn. 50,000. What is the amount of animals that kill people? Oh, okay. Here the state's 2 million deer.
Yeah.
2 million deer in one fucking state. How many people are in Michigan?
More than 2 million, but not a whole
10?
lot more. And I think in Wisconsin, cattle outnumber folks.
They're dropping by the day with that
9.9 million. Holy shit. That's insane. So they're 20% deer. So what that means is, here's the reality. You literally could feed that entire state off the deer population. That's real. Because one deer, you can fucking eat a deer for months. And one deer is going to make more than one deer.
I think that is a really interesting point, and it kind of goes along with some of my agreement with these guys. We're subsidizing the dollar meal or whatever, the dollar hamburger and that kind of like quick meat. You drive through, you get the burger, and off you go.
Yeah.
I'm not. What I would advocate for is that I'm okay with eating less meat. They had Michael Pollan on it.
Yeah.
He talked about eating less meat based on the numbers that they were using, which I think was like.
I think it was 0.6 something. I think is what they said on the movie.
So like a half a pound of meat a day.
Well, it was more than that. It was 0.6 something, I believe.
What you're supposed to eat?
No, that's what the average American eats, evidently.
That's it. I would
Well,
think
I mean, that's
American-
like
More than that, but sure.
Yeah, I balance that shit out.
You bring the average up.
Well, you got to think about the guys. We've all seen these guys. Charlie Chicken Fingers and Slobber McGee.
Right.
Eating fast
Charlie
food
Chicken
every.
Fingers and Slobber McGee.
You've seen these guys eat, right? You're like, watch out! You're going to eat your finger, dude. Like,
Yeah.
slow down.
Well,
and
people
that's
are
what we're
addicted to food, man.
That's a fact. That's what we're dealing with, because the real sickness isn't that we're raising meat; it's the demand.
Mm-hmm.
So farmers are rising to meet that demand, and people aren't demanding good meat; they're demanding shitty, cheap meat that they can buy for 99 cents.
Well, I think one of the things that these folks were addressing in that documentary that I think didn't get to the heart of it all, but the heart of it all really is the amount of human beings. The only reason why, like, if Casanova was the world, you wouldn't need a fucking factory farm.
You sure wouldn't.
You wouldn't need it.
No.
I mean,
Well,
Casanova is essentially a sustainable environment.
Yeah.
All you need is some solar power, some windmills for electricity. You got your own spring. You got
Yep.
your water you can get from a well. You got your cattle that graze. You have more than enough food for you.
Yep.
You could grow your own
Yeah.
vegetables. You can
They
what you
did.
don't have in the winter, or what you
Yep.
don't, what you want to last through the winter, and you're good. But we have too many goddamn people.
Right. Isn't that it often comes down to people keep fucking, and that's kind of
Fucking is fun.
well, right. And,
I'm a fan of it.
When are we going home? Can we get an early flight tomorrow?
me too, man.
Well, I have 3 kids, so I should shut the fuck up because I'm obviously making more people than I am.
Are
Well,
they all
say
boys?
that-
Are they all
no,
boys?
all girls, man. They're
See,
gonna
my
make a
best
bunch
friend
of babies.
Gatlin, he's got 5 boys. It's one thing to have 5 kids, but to have them all be boys, that's like you're
Cum
talking
factories.
exponential.
They're just gonna
You know.
fucking shoot jizz all through all the land and make more boys.
Well, the cool thing is, and Doug and I have been talking about this, and he mentioned earlier, like, we're sitting here talking about this really interesting stuff because we don't want to come off on this podcast as a bunch of, knuckle dragging mouth breathers.
Well, you're definitely
eating
not.
meat.
You're definitely not.
So, but we're talking
so
about
let's
this.
be careful.
Settle down, fucker.
We're talking about all this stuff in the middle of L.A. where you got
Right.
a guy dressed like Spider-Man and all these
Yeah.
these women wearing,
Well, by the way, that's why we're way out here in the suburbs.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around that.
Yeah,
That's not a good
well,
place.
thank you for putting us down there, though.
Right. Yeah, no, we've had
I
a great
think you guys
time doing
wanted to
this.
be down there, right?
No, it's perfect.
Well, it's a good place to, just to
Come in
cut
and
People
your-
watch.
watch.
What?
People watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing we've been talking about a lot of awesome people and really digging deeper into this. But there's guys like Doug can expand on this more because he's read more of the book. But this guy Mark Shepard and other guys, I mean, people contend that we can raise enough food sustainably. But part of that equation is, and that's what maybe we could unify with these guys, like guys from Cowspiracy is, let's not talk about ending meat. That's an unachievable goal. That's never going to happen. Let's talk about educating people. Say, hey, let's not eat quite so much so we can sustain.
Okay, but just to play devil's advocate, because
Yeah.
a lot of these guys they love animals. They love animals. They're animal lovers. They it's almost like
Yeah. So are we.
But they do it in a way where they don't want animals to die. They want those animals to die of old age only. The problem, I think, there's an ideology attached to veganism where once they stop eating meat, they want everybody else to stop too. Well, you're talking about 95% of the world that eats meat. It's 95%, something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Please always check my numbers, Jamie. I was off by 100%.
Did you have the day off? Did those guys go?
Yeah.
But if these guys, this is to play devil's advocate, if these guys can stop eating meat and become vegans, why can't the world? And I think that's what a lot of people are saying.
Well, other things I would agree with them. Have a garden.
Yes.
Yeah.
Grow some food on your balcony in the city.
Yeah.
We have a couple of mutual friends who are growing stuff on their balcony
That's
in New
weed,
York
though.
City.
That's different.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
One thing I noticed
Cook it,
in that
eat
movie
it,
was dude's hydroponic system on the rooftop was empty.
Yes.
My
Yeah.
hydroponic system at home is
The
plumb full.
Conspiracy guys,
Yes.
hydroponics.
Well,
picked up on it
it's
right
kind of
away. I was
fucked
just
up.
like,
Yeah.
And we're not here to throw punches.
Well,
or
they
anything,
could have just started it and just set it
go
up.
buy
and-
some plants and put them in there for heaven's sake.
One of my favorite stories is these former FBI agents who were retired and they were arrested because they were growing hydroponic plants and vegetables in their basement. And, the DEA passes by houses and they scan. These people bought hydroponic equipment. When you buy hydroponic equipment, they flag you and they follow you. It's so fucking insane that growing vegetables has become a crime because so many people grow pot. They assume that if you're growing a plant with some sort of a plant system, that you must be growing an illegal drug. So with no evidence whatsoever, 2 fucking former FBI agents, they break down their door, guns a-blazing, and they arrest these people and then find out they're fucking growing tomatoes.
Yeah, it's kind of a hot button deal going on in Reedsburg right now, where my hometown. Yeah, my buddy Gatlin, I already mentioned him, but he's on a whim. I mean, this dude he's a successful appraiser, real estate appraiser, but he's always looking for that home run. So he's making a living, but he's taking his cuts. And so now his latest venture, he took his whole tax return and just turned this building that he couldn't lease into a hydroponic wonderland.
For weed?
No. Well, when it comes legal, he's going to be ready to rock and roll. And he wants to do CBD oil extraction. I mean, he's...
Well, the government's going after that now.
Right. So, but you get these people walking by, and we got these purple lights, and people are, what are they growing in there? And everybody's... And everybody thinks we're growing weed, and it's like, if we were growing weed, the cops would have the door kicked down 2 weeks ago.
Maybe they should put a sign. We're not growing weed, you fucks.
Well, he just needs to get a sign up.
That is a sign that you should put up.
It's called Grow Lucky. You can Google it. I think it's growluckygreens.com. It's all pretty new, but
I would definitely assume that guy knows where the weed is.
yeah, Grow Lucky Greens. Yeah,
with that name.
Yeah.
How lucky can I get? How much for an ounce of your lucky shit, man?
Let's talk about this downstairs.
But
come to the special room.
Yeah.
Anyway, that idea of growing the garden and people taking responsibility for their food, is such a big deal. And those the fellows that you had in here, that's. Where I'm joined at the hip with them about that.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with that. And there's a guy named Ron Finley that I had on before who was awesome. And he's a proponent of urban gardening. And what he does is he takes medians, like, that you just see grass and bullshit in LA.
Genius.
And he grows
stuff.
plants in them. He grows vegetables and foods. And he does it in abandoned lots. He'll set up gardens in abandoned lots, and he does it all throughout South Central, and he has people that live in these communities growing their own food. And he had this amazing point that I never considered before. He's like, you drive down this street, and you see bushes, you see trees, you see all these plants, and you can't eat none of it.
Yeah.
He goes, we're wasting water on shit we can't even eat. He goes, you could have food growing in the same places you have all of these trees. Why don't we do that? And I was sitting there going, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Like an
We'll talk about
orange
lawns,
tree.
too. Lawns.
Fuck yeah, right? An orange tree looks great.
Well, that's exactly right. Aesthetically pleasing on top of it all. This
food.
You got to get them some of these pictures.
Food.
This guy, Mark Shepard, who's from our area, and he doesn't know me from the Man in the Moon, but
this is his book, Restoration
Agriculture, Real World Permaculture for
Look it
farmers.
up. It's
aerial photographs of his farm.
artwork.
And it looks exactly. It looks like a landscape architect was involved. Layering of plants, starting with the tallest trees down to annuals eventually. At the same time, he's pasturing through their 3 and 4 different kinds of animals. They're cleaning up the nuts that they didn't harvest.
Which is very important to clean your nuts.
That's what I'm saying.
Bar none. Most important.
Unless you're into weird shit. Some people like dirty things. It's where you get minerals.
All right.
Nut butter?
Right? Dirt. Whoa, is this his stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. So check that out.
That's amazing.
Isn't that cool?
That's gorgeous. And so this is, it says New Forest Farm, Mark Shepard, Permaculture. What does it say? There's the words abbreviated there. Permaculture
apprenticeship program. Okay. I think he does classes and stuff. Right?
Oh, that's cool.
And the amount of food he can pull off that, Joe, and that's and they graze that then. So and he talks about.
What do you mean? Cows graze that?
Yeah, they and pigs and chickens.
So there's grass in between.
So he says. And maybe Doug can find this, but
I've got it.
The amount of food he can grow on there, and he talks about just how many vegetables. He's like, but if you're only growing vegetables, you're gonna have to mow this stuff. So it makes sense to and that's the whole thing. You got to complete the loop. You got to complete the cycle. You got to close that loop and find that ecological harmony. That's the whole thing.
2 photos ago, Jamie. Don't go through those so quick. Right there, bam. Make that bigger. Whoa, he's got little ponds in there too.
Yeah.
And so the cattle graze in the grass area, and then in between the grass, he's got trees that grow food. Wow, that's beautiful, too.
And then he brings pigs and chickens through.
And this is near you?
Yeah,
Viroqua.
not far away.
Viola? Or
yeah, Viroqua.
Now go to it now. It's a big fucking ice skating rink.
Yeah.
Frozen tundra.
Yeah, let's go in June.
His point being that when we grow one crop on a farm field, corn, soybeans, organic or otherwise, or vegetables, that sort of thing, that in our area in the winter, then that's a desert. I mean, once the beans come off, that's what it is. I mean, you saw it, the deer come out into the field and they eat a little bit of the stuff and and all that. And guys will pasture out on that. But it really does become it's sort of that one-trick pony, which to a certain degree, vegetable gardening will be as well, although you can rotate crops through. But like on my place, we're growing livestock, we're enriching the soil, our pasture's getting better all the time because we're not over pasturing in any particular place. There's carbon sequestering going on.
What's that mean?
Carbon sequestering.
Locking up the carbon in the soil.
So, like with composting and things along those lines?
Yeah, there's people
Taking the
that
CO2 out of the atmosphere.
contend that cattle and proper management in the pasture rotation, that they can start to turn back the climate change. You know,
How would that work?
By sequestering the carbon, starting to pull it out. And when we till, you know, the constant tillage that's one of the, you know, that's a no-no. You know, a lot of no-tilling, a lot of rotational grazing. That's up and up. I mean, that's where we need to be.
Multiple benefits from one action. So I'm pasturing, and you saw some of the pastures, some of the places where you hunted, it was pasturing. There's wildlife in there. We've got good, clean water. When we went to a point on our farm where we weren't over pasturing, and it was just something that we sort of learned. The streams were real wide. When we were over pasturing, they were really wide. The water was shallow, and it was warm. No trout. As time has gone by, and we weren't over pasturing anymore, those streams narrow up because it's running water that's going to cut that, and it starts to fill in, the grass starts to grow. Now, you stepped across a creek that you used to have to walk through. So there's trout in there now. The cattle are going in there, they're eating a certain amount of the grass. We keep them, we keep moving them through. They're eating a certain amount of the grass, they're keeping some of the invasive species down. Deer are still living in there. Songbirds are still living there. Game birds are still living in there. All of those things are happening, and the plants themselves are pulling the CO2, the whole photosynthetic process, pulling that out and putting it back into the ground where it belongs to counteract some of that. So, I think I'm getting like 3 or 4 different positive results from having pasture, hickory orchard with some bigger trees and that sort of thing. This dude with permaculture starts to add multiple other things, layers of, so if you think about an acre of land like this table, and if you're growing one crop on it, one vegetable crop, you've got an acre of land, 43,560 square feet of that particular vegetable or those groups of vegetables. But with the idea of permaculture, you have your upper layers, trees, big trees, big oak trees, and you might have hickory for hickory nuts and that sort of thing. So
bush type things and berries.
Well, to begin with, that upper level. So on that same chunk of ground, you've got this large tree. It's producing wood, which this looks like a good oak table here that we're leaning on. It's the same sort of thing. The next layer is the smaller trees like apple, fruit trees and that sort of thing. Below that are shrubs that are going to be, serviceberry, chokeberry, aronia, some of the antioxidant producing fruits. And then you go down to the next layer, which is going to be things like asparagus and rhubarb, and it keep coming down. So now instead of just that one plane of plants growing, you've got on that same acre, you've just grown multiple acres of food. And that is just something that needs to be, thought about in the bigger thing. He's then rotating through 4 different kinds of animals. He's running beef through it. And they're not in there all the time so it takes management. After beef, he's and it's called a leader-follower grazing system. After beef, he's running pigs through it, because pigs are a great cleanup animal. After that comes turkeys, and turkeys are cleaning up the grubs and the whatnot in the shit from the cows and the pigs. He runs sheep in it, and last might be chickens. So the intensity of management is incredible, and the amount of layers of food that are coming off of that, and then layers of acreage. Well, suddenly we're getting, in his scenario, I'm getting 3 or 4 benefits out of it. He's still getting all that carbon sequestering and all that. But now he's built that up to 10 or 12 different positive results from the same thing. And one of them is from a wildlife perspective, which is one of the things that gets talked about all the time. You garden at home. I garden at home. What's the one thing that every garden that has wildlife around it has? A fence. If you're going to grow vegetables for profit or for fun and put your effort into it, you're going to put a fence around it. You're going to exclude wildlife from that.
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the main contentions we had when we sat down. We're like, okay, this is going to be tough. These guys put forth a really good narrative and had some really irrefutable facts. But and one of the things we talked about the water, talked about the acreage, but the wildlife thing. One thing that they said was, and where these livestock are living, that is area void of wildlife. I mean, I look at my pasture, from the soil microbes and the worms to the bugs and butterflies to the field mice and moles, and we've got hawks, and we see a badger and a fox. I mean, that's wildlife. They
had a very idealistic point of view. They didn't understand wolves. They didn't understand the management of wolves. They didn't understand the reason why they're starting to open up hunting seasons on wolves. They also didn't know that Idaho is one of the most wildlife-rich places in the country, where people go and hunt elk and mule deer. I mean, Idaho is fucking filled with animals, and they thought that Idaho is like, it's all farms now. It's devoid of. It's an idealized sort of hippie vegan approach, which they're just leaning towards that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean they don't have great points.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, no, that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
It was a tough thing to do. To come out and be a counterpoint for something that you agree with a lot of.
What their main bone, and I think a lot of people, I mean, it's the factory farming thing. What we're talking about here, I don't think it's sustainable for the population of Los Angeles. And what you're talking about here with this kind of a farm, man, you would need a giant fucking farm like that to feed Los Angeles.
Or a lot of them, a lot of smaller farms.
But you would mean so many of them. I don't know how much they produce if you compared in comparison to one of these gigantic factory farms.
Well, and I'm not.
I don't know.
I'm
right?
not. My number guy isn't going to have those numbers either.
Well, no one is. I mean, and this is the thing. We can keep going deeper and deeper with this, because people can say, "Well, hey, it's sustainable in Cazenovia." Okay, well, is this sustainable in Wisconsin? Yes. Is it sustainable on the entire eastern side of the country? Yeah. Not really. Okay. Well, what if we can get the United States sustainable? Well, we still got India. Well, we're fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, you got 1 billion people living in a place a third the size of the United States. What do you do then? Those numbers might be wrong.
The big thing here is, and the bigger conversation, I think, is and that's something that, gosh, people that care should really, shove veganism and meat eating aside, and just let's say, how do we make this work? And I think it's education. I think people need to understand that you can't just go around eating meat, Charlie's chicken fingers. You can't be doing that. You got to have a balanced diet, and you can't be eating pounds of meat a day. That's what
for health. You probably shouldn't overeat. I think we all agree.
Overeat anything.
But this is a different subject. I think we're talking about. We're talking about sustainability, and we're talking about feeding gigantic swaths of people.
Yeah.
And that's what these factory farms have set up. I mean, through the method of collecting nitrogen from the oxygen. I mean, what from the air. That the Haber method that they invented in like the early 1900s, that's how they figured out how to extract nitrogen, and because of that, a gigantic population boom ensued. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why there's so many people in the world today. This is widely accredited with the Haber method of collecting nitrogen, because before that it was really difficult to fertilize soil. Once they figured out how to extract nitrogen from the actual air itself, things got a little easier to grow food, and the population boomed. And that's part of what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with here is kind of, when we talk about wildlife, we're talking about the 50,000 car accidents that are in Michigan every year alone because of the overabundance of deer. This is sort of what we're talking about with human beings. We have an overabundance of human beings. Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting we have massive hunts on humans.
So thin the herd?
Thin the herd. But we would, if we were some sort of an alien, and we looked at, let's put it this way. If chimpanzees were overrunning Chicago, like somehow or another chimpanzees figured out how to get to Chicago, they fucking swang from tree to tree, and they moved in and started setting up shop and overrunning the place apart, where people were getting in car accidents with chimps. And would we kill them? That would be very tricky. I don't think we would, because chimps are way fucking smarter than deer, and we like smart shit. Yeah. So we wouldn't kill chimps the way we would kill deer. So people obviously are smarter than, most people are smarter than chimps. I know some people that probably aren't smarter than chimps. But when it gets to intelligent animals, that's when we get weird. Like, nobody gives a fuck if you kill a bug. Okay? If mosquitoes contain Zika virus and malaria and all this different shit, you can kill mosquitoes all goddamn day long. And for whatever reason, nobody gives a fuck about mosquitoes because we've all agreed that mosquitoes are the enemy. Right? Mosquitoes contain malaria. Malaria has killed, this is a number I know is real. Malaria has killed 50% of all the people that have died ever. How about that?
Wow.
Say that again?
50% of all the human beings that have died ever in the history of people have died from malaria. How about them apples?
You know, that's a
heavy thing you laid on me there.
Take your breath
That's some
away
real
thing,
shit
yeah.
because I've been fascinated with malaria for years. I've read a lot of shit on malaria, and I've had 2 friends that got malaria, including Justin Wren, our friend who was in here recently, who fights this weekend on Bellator. Good luck to my friend Justin. He's the best. This guy is fucking. You want to talk about an amazing human being? This guy, he gave up like years of his life to go to the Congo and dig wells for these people, these pygmies in the Congo. He's just the salt of the earth, like the nicest guy ever. But he got malaria when he was doing that and almost died. So nobody gives a fuck if you kill mosquitoes. That's my point. You know, you could swat flies. Vegans will swat a fucking mosquito, right? You know, you don't go, please, namaste, enjoy my blood. It's the blood of a carrot eater. No, you fucking, you slap that fucker down. But there's a certain level. Like, okay, if an ant is on your food, a lot of times a vegan will kill that ant, and what do you do with the body? You throw it to the ground. You'd ignore it because it's little. But you just fucking kill an ant in my house, and if you went like that and brushed it off, I wouldn't say a word. I'd be like, Doug's doing some acceptable behavior. He killed an ant that's on his pants, and he dropped it on the ground. But if a mouse ran across my kitchen, you stomped it and then ignored it, I'd be like, hey, fucker, what is this fucking
Finish the job. Finish the
guts
job.
and hair you've left?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a weird hierarchy of living things.
And the line is clearly, I mean, one of the lines is fellow mammals.
Yes.
Yep.
And you know, I don't even know what to say about that, but
not rats. Fuck rats.
Right.
Rats have the Black Plague and all kinds of. Nobody gives a shit if you fucking kill a rat in your garage. If you're so hardcore, you're not into killing rats. I got a great rat story. I
want to hear a rat story.
I was living in the hills, and I rented this house, and I had a real rat problem to the point where I'd hear them banging around inside the rafters. They're big, man. Like the hills around Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a very strange place because you have this city, and then you have just outside the city pretty abundant wildlife, including coyotes, a lot of hawks, and a lot of crazy shit. But this place that I lived had a rat problem. So I set out a rat trap, and I killed this fucking big-ass rat, like as big as my laptop. It was huge, man. It was, no bullshit.
Like a snap trap?
Yeah, big fucker where you got to be real careful when you set it.
Because take a finger off.
Yes, it definitely break one, right? I set it out, and I heard it in my kitchen. I was whack! You know, I'm like, oh, shit, I got one. And I went out there, and I looked, and it's this big fucking, like, fat boy rat. I was like, oh, jeez, look at the size of that thing. So I said, okay, in the morning I'll get up and I'll put that thing in the garbage and whatever and deal with it. I went to sleep. I got up in the morning, and that fucker was gone. They ate him down to almost nothing. All that was left is the tail. So rats apparently don't even like rat tail. But they had eaten most of his body. The rats had cannibalized most of his body. That's why we say, fuck rats.
Yeah, and if you see one rat, you got a dozen.
Oh, it'll leave.
Yeah.
My house was overrun with them. It was really bad.
Oh.
Yeah, it was real bad, man. It was like one of the first places I lived when I lived out here. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because I before that, I lived in New York and in New Rochelle. And my area, although New York City has a huge rat problem, New York City's rat problem is crazy. I parked my car once. This is back in the days of phones, pay phones. I didn't have a cell phone. I parked my car at this gas station. I was getting some gas, and I walked over to the pay phone. And as I'm on the phone, I saw 3 rats jump up in my wheel wells, climb up over my tires. 3 big fat rats. Like, this place was overrun with rats.
They were looking to move or something.
They say that if you see one rat, I don't know, maybe check the numbers, but if you see one, I don't know if it's 100 or there's 100 or 1,000, something like that.
Let's
if you
say
see
50
one,
million.
If you see one, there's 50 million around. You know,
well, it's
watch out.
Way more
have you
than
seen
you
the pizza
want.
rat? Have you seen this New York City pizza rat?
No.
There's a rat taking
You were
pizza
just
home
waiting
in
for
New
this,
York.
weren't you?
Well, this is cool, but here's something that a lot of people don't know. Rats are hunters. Why don't you, Jamie, pull up rat kills pigeon? because there's not just one video of these. There's many videos of rats in New York City attacking and killing pigeons. iPhone videos. Well, it's just fucking bizarre. I had no idea. I had no idea they were predators.
Oh.
Did you?
No,
Watch this.
well,
Look at this. Look.
Not a,
Fucking rat is jacking this pigeon, and the pigeon gets away and like almost gets free. What's going on here? It's like they're a little laying prey. So this rat has this pigeon by the neck. See, this is a different one than I saw. The one I saw, the pigeon gets away. It's like near stairs, and oh yeah, here it is. The pigeon tries to get away, and the rat chases it down. Look at this.
because he's already winged him.
Yeah, but look at this. The rat chases a living pigeon.
well, look how the camera guy doesn't want to. He's like, not getting too close.
Guy walking around with his iPhone. I know what I'm going to do today.
Isn't
But
this
I would video
bizarre?
that too, you know.
Oh, why wouldn't you?
Oh fuck!
What else
yeah.
are you gonna do?
But I had no idea. Did you know that rats were predators?
No,
Opportunists, maybe.
But
Yeah,
this is a
opportunistic.
predator. It's
Yeah, I know.
chasing
Oh,
down
yeah.
an animal.
Yeah, no. Always a problem with when you had grain around.
Look,
You had to-
look how strong he is.
Yeah.
He just jumped that fucking curb with that thing in its mouth like it was nothing.
There was one point he stood up on his hind legs with it in his mouth.
Yeah.
Fucking monsters.
Yeah.
We're so lucky they're little. Imagine if a rat was the size of a deer.
Oh, look, there it goes again.
He still tries to get away, and he's on it. Ooh, he's got its back.
That's good
He's got
technique.
the hooks in. Look
Joe,
at the
is that
hooks.
good technique?
That's very good. Look at the back leg. See how he's controlling? Very good technique.
Oh my God.
Jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu.
I had to mention something like that because the only way my grandpa knows who I'm talking to is the fight guy.
Yeah.
That's how I explained it to my grandpa.
Your grandpa likes watching fight.
Loves it. Loves UFC. Like I said, he's the only guy in the nursing home that watches.
Wow.
93, going on 94.
Freaking out all the other people. Stop the fight! Yeah, so
It looks like that's it.
rats are creeps.
Wow.
See, now if you caught that rat in a trap, nobody would get mad at you. But if you you shoot a bear, they'll fucking protest.
So I have a different story for you. Had a house up in Door County, an old farmhouse, and no one lived in it for a long time. And we had rats in that house. But the other thing that we had in that house were snakes. And
Sounds nasty.
my daughter's mother didn't like snakes at all. She opened up the back door of the place one time, and it was I don't know. I guess it was a fox snake because it was a big ass snake, and it's like knocking on the door, trying to get. There was a spot where they could get in. When we started to remodel the place, we put some beams up, and we were taking some interior walls down. Snake skins.
Oh,
Jesus. Inside the wall.
I would. She's just probably, if she's listening to this, she's hearing that for the first time.
Oh,
Because
you
I
didn't
didn't
tell
tell
her?
her, man. She wasn't there.
Oh, wow.
Snake skin, and they're like 3 feet long, where they molted or whatever the word is for
snake
them.
farm dog. Yes.
Oh, man.
But those aren't predators, right? I mean, those aren't
well, they're
poisonous.
predators
type,
on
yeah.
mice, and
Right.
they're probably in there for the rats. And,
It's probably good to
Yeah.
have them,
Well,
you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing
Circle
about
of life.
like in my neighborhood, I see hawks all the time, and they're the ones that keep the population of rodents down.
Yeah.
You see them all the time, man. They're fucking beautiful.
As do in our area, this is a real thing that I struggle with a little bit is coyotes. Mm-hmm. People do coyote hunting around me, and we were talking about wolves before. And I'm not physically, I'm not worried about coyotes like taking us down or anything
Right.
like that. And I have this, in fact, talked to Yanis Putelis about it, and his response to me talking about allowing coyote hunting on our place was he goes, "Oh man, I just think they're trying to make a living too." And they eat a lot of rodents. They clean up a lot of the weak and the old of deer and that sort of thing. But my buddy Greg, Greg Kiefer, who you may know, big dude, Steve talks about him all the time, recently had a deer run into his yard by a pack of coyotes, and
Whoa.
they took it down and killed it in his yard.
Whoa.
It was a deer that had been wounded during the gun. We assume the gun season. It had a big scar on the back of its neck. I suppose it could have been an arrow that had cut it or something like that. So it was weak or whatever. And in the middle of the night, just went down in the middle of the night. He went out there because I couldn't believe it. Never seen anything.
How
like
many
it.
coyotes?
Well, based on he didn't see how many, but it was. They work in groups of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So they right.
I have a chicken coop in my yard, and I went out in the middle of the night to shut the coop because I let the chickens out, and they wander around, then I close the coop. And when I closed the coop, I was just outside enjoying the peace, looking up at the stars, and I heard these deer running like running full clip, and then something was chasing after them full clip, but it was dark and my eyes hadn't adjusted, so I was trying to figure out what the fuck was happening. But these deer were running and this something was chasing them. And I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it was a coyote, but it could have been a mountain lion. But I saw what looked like the silhouette of a coyote on the top of this hill. And I was like, this is so wild. Like, here's a house here, and this fucking asshole over here is watching The Bachelorette. And, like, it's inside, this guy pulls into his driveway in his Mercedes. He's smoking his e-cigarette, and some fucking tooth and claw shit is going on right there. Right there. These coyotes are chasing down these deer. Yeah. Because there's a series of oak trees down the street from my house where these deer tend to bed. I see them there all the time, and there's, probably 5 or 6 of them, But, you'll see coyotes, especially come spring, like when the fawns are being born. You'll see these fuckers hanging around, just looking for an easy meal.
Guys who raise cattle around me will talk about, and I don't know, Nathan, if you know anything about this, but to my knowledge, I've never had a calf taken by coyotes or anything like that. I have had a calf that was born and died. It was stillborn or something that wasn't there the next day.
So coyotes took it.
But the cow abandoned it, too.
Right.
The one thing you do not want to mess with is a 1,450-pound Hereford cow who just had a calf.
Yeah, I would imagine.
She is not going to let you near that calf.
Ugh, get kicked by a cow? Oh.
I've only had pigs and chickens taken. And that's only when the dogs, we forget and leave the dogs in for the night.
A piglet or an actual whole pig?
Piglet. A full-grown pig would probably, especially if there's more than one, I'm sure they'd take care of themselves. They're vicious.
So big.
I got bit by one of my pigs. If I were to fall down in my pig pen,
you'd be fucked.
Right? And if I couldn't get up, my wife would come home and there'd be nothing left of me.
Yeah.
3-4 pigs would have me done.
Yeah, that's real. That's real.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. That's the number one. Here's more statistics. That's
He's your number guy.
Is that the other 50% of people that have died?
It's number one animal that kills people on farms.
Really?
Pigs. Yeah, people fall sometimes an old farmer will have a heart attack and fall into the pigsty, and they just gobble them up.
I for the first time I actually saw one of my pigs eat a chicken.
Please Google that.
I couldn't save the chicken in time, and so I was like, what am I going to do? I don't want to save a half mangled chicken. I let them finish it, but they systematically cornered the thing, and I'm running over to try to, and then it was over. It was too late.
I had a coyote take a chicken from my yard. I watched it hop the fence, but it's in its mouth. It was crazy, and I was gonna kill the fucker, but then I realized it was a female, and then it had cubs. Like a lot of the yiping and hollering that you hear, like people think there's a lot of misconceptions about coyotes, and one of them is that when you ever hear that there's like some sort of a party. A lot of it is a mother communicating with her young. Yeah. And I was pretty sure that this was what happened because my dog had let this female near the chickens. Like the dog had sort of aided and abetted this coyote killing this chicken. And then I realized this is a female that has babies.
So that's where your soft spot was then.
Yeah, I'm a pussy.
When you hear that sound though, when my wife first moved down to our farm, it sounds like there are a pack of children being murdered.
Yeah, it
is just, and in a still night, out where we are, it just resonates. That's good.
That's weird. That's what you hear, right?
I have a relatively new friend out in Washington who has actually been emailing me and asking me for advice about coyotes, trapping coyotes. Do you know anything about trapping coyotes?
Talk to Ranella. He recommends subsonic 22s.
Yeah. One of
I'm more a fan of shooting them than trapping.
Wildlife ecologists I know in Wisconsin, when people would start to talk to them about, I'm trying to get rid of this animal or, whatever, having to make a woodchuck or something like that. He would always recommend a small piece of lead at a very high velocity.
Yeah. Well, that's what a buddy of mine does. He sets out cat food. He puts cat food. He uses these coyotes that were targeting his dogs. So he would set out plates of cat food and sit on his balcony and just wait.
Yeah,
and
you can call them in too.
Yeah, you can call them in with predator calls, but you might call them some other shit too.
Depends
around
on where
these
you
parts, man. We were talking about this yesterday that they just did this study of all these different mountain lions that they've killed. Here's some more numbers. I think they killed 100 mountain lions in the San Francisco area, the Northern California area, and out of these mountain lions that they killed, most of them had cats and dogs in their bodies.
Oh, yeah. That's
They're finding out that this is what these things are eating. Only 5% of them had deer in their body.
Well,
it's crazy.
It's easier.
Yeah. But it's bizarre. I mean, they're targeting people's pets. I mean, that's their food. It's fucking weird, man.
In Madison, Wisconsin, where I live, on the edges of town, and we actually live near 2 parks. We have coyotes, and there's a certain group of folks who are like, well, they're just out there trying to make a living too, until
one of them kills their cat.
Mittens and Fifi get eaten, and then we've got a little situation we have to deal with.
Yeah, make up a story for the kids at that point.
It's a bizarre thing to see your cat in the jaws of a coyote as it's running away. There's the LA Museum of Natural History has this really cool exhibit on North American animals, and their exhibit, I had a picture of it on my Instagram, Jamie, of the coyote. Their exhibit of the coyote in Los Angeles is a coyote with a fucking cat in its mouth. That's in the Museum of Natural History in Los Angeles. The actual, they have stuffed animals. They have buffalo.
Sure.
They show moose. And they have these, so you can get to see, that's what that one of those looks like.
Yeah.
Well, they have these displays of these stuffed animals. So the coyote has a fucking cat in its mouth, and it's on someone's porch.
Bringing
Look at this.
that home.
Look at this.
Jeez.
That's in the Natural History. That's the museum. Fucking cat, dead cat. And my kids were like this.
Yeah.
They're like, Daddy.
Well, honey.
It's the only fucking animal that's killing something in the entire museum. This is the animal that's killing. There might have been a couple
for a minute there,
lions.
I thought that was the notes from the museum, and then I realized it was you had written that.
Yeah, see,
boy, really? They're saying fucker in
Yeah,
the Natural History Museum?
No, but look what these people are saying. Look at this guy. My cat was just killed by one of these fuckers. I'll shoot a coyote for no reason other than it's a coyote. Fuck a coyote. Yeah, and they're right, man. Those are little creepers. Little creepers. Look at this. What does it say? Swine likely kill fewer people than cattle do, but there's no reliable data.
20 people a year killed by cattle, it said.
Whoa. Find out how many people are killed by pigs.
I couldn't find any but one story recently.
One
guy in Oregon.
I would guess that number is a little bit higher. I mean, personally, I know 2 people have been killed by bulls.
Yeah, well, bulls it's especially solitary bulls.
The old expression is you fuck with the bull, you get the horn.
Yeah, I would imagine that happens.
I was milking for a farmer one time, and one of the things with dairy farming, and I grew up dairy farming, but if a cow has a stepped-on teat, that's we usually say tit, but we're on the. I guess it doesn't matter now. But they have a stepped-on teat
to clean it up,
or they get mastitis, which is a sort of infection. It's very sore, obviously. So you gotta strap up the milker and not put it on that one. And I was in a hurry. I was late for my other job, so I'm trying to hurry, and I forgot about this one cow. And this guy's cows didn't go in the right stall, so my head wasn't where it needed to be.
Anyway,
I put the milker on the bad tit, and she kicked me so hard. She kicked me in the face, and then I flew back into the metal post. I mean, I was out for a good 20 minutes, and you wake up in a daze. I mean, so that's one example of how somebody could easily be killed by a cow.
But they're so big. All you have to do is fall, and one stomps you, and that's it.
Well, again, it goes back to the calving thing. Our neighbor, the guy who I used to, he still does some farming for us, cuts and rakes and bales our hay, was almost killed by a cow that just fresh and just had a calf, and he went in there to deal with the calf, and she got him into a corner and beat the snot out of him. Eventually, he was able to crawl out and get under a gate, and this is normally a very nice animal, so it's funny to tell that story when I've been sending you all this shit about how nice my cows are and I can scratch your heads and stuff.
Well, we were talking about that because I said that when we were around your cows, they fucking panicked and they ran off. But you brought up an important point. We were shooting squirrels.
No,
or pigeons. They were shooting pigeons.
So what happened?
I didn't think we had shot anything yet.
Was there a lot of you, though, too? There's a lot of you guys?
There's a few.
Yeah. There were 4 guys.
4 guys? Okay.
Brian Cow might have been singing.
Loud, yeah.
He was singing already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys smell different. I mean,
I definitely
I wouldn't let
different.
strangers in with mine. I wouldn't want that.
Well,
yeah.
What happened that day is a couple of different things that happened, because you factually you were correct. What happened was you went into their pasture. Well, they weren't out in pasture. We had them in a
corral
in a barnyard because we had been hunting, and I didn't want them out on the pasture where the deer would be and that sort of thing. There is that video of that, and you see as you guys are walking in, and I never even thought about this then, Joe. It's like, I should probably go out there. The cattle will be a little calmer if I'm with them. But, I was afraid that Brian was going to fall through the floor of the barn. It's showing him, here's where you can't, good Lord. Oh. And I wanted to throw rocks too. But as you're walking out there, they all turn and look at you as you're walking in, because that's on that outtake. And then when you start shooting, they're all down in the corner, being very in a defensive position. And the analogy I think I used to you is, imagine you're at home having dinner, and 4 dudes walk into your house with cameras and guns, talking loud, doing their whole thing, and then they start shooting. Well, I'm guessing that you're going to probably go to a corner of the house and get in a defensive position.
No doubt. Once this shooting started happening, Jamie, I just pulled this up. There's more people were killed by pigs in 2014 than were killed by sharks.
Sharks get a bad rap.
Last year, it says there were 12 fatal pig attacks worldwide versus 10 shark fatalities. So, different stats, I guess, different websites.
I was looking up on farm specifically. I suppose some of them might have been on different stuff.
So this could have been.
Yeah, I think they're talking about wild pigs, actually, which I didn't know wild pigs killed that many people. They're fucking creepers, though. Have you ever been around wild pigs?
I actually have not.
Man, I was in Tejon Ranch with Ranella, and we were walking down this road, and we were pig hunting, and we got close to these pigs, and they didn't know we were there because there's really thick brush and grasses, and we heard them fighting, and they were less than 20 yards away, and they're going to war. And I'm like, these are demons, man. They're fucking demons. They sound like monsters. They sound like something from the Lord of the Rings. And they're attacking each other for whatever reason, like right there. I'm like, God, there's fucking creepy things with their giant tusks and their black hair, and they look like demons.
Yeah,
and they sound crazy. You hear one, you go, oh, okay. That's how the king in the Game of Thrones died. Remember? Did you ever watch that show? How dare you? How dare you say no? He was killed by a wild boar. Spoiler alert. Season 1. But
so now when I watch it,
well, it doesn't matter.
You don't have to, Doug.
Yeah,
he dies quick. He dies early in the show, but he was killed by a wild boar, and that's not uncommon. They're big animals, man. They get real big.
Fair enough. You're going out there.
You're not going to refute that, Doug.
Yeah. Well, they're a very different animal. I mean, deer have killed people. It has happened, not just car accidents, but they have gored people.
Yeah.
It has happened. It is possible.
Yeah.
It's very rare, obviously. Usually they just want to get the fuck away from you.
Yeah.
But, they're wild. They're animals. They don't play by our rules. And I think we have a real problem in this world with our idea of what an animal is. We anthropomorphize these things. We think of them the same way we think about our pets. When you have a dog and you think of your dog the same way you think of a wild bear, like, boy, they're playing on some fucking completely different fields.
Yeah.
They have a completely different rule book.
Yeah.
Well, and we like to think that we're not animals, and that kind of disconnects us. And that's where the disengagement and the disconnection with our food supply comes from.
Yeah.
We're so, we're above it.
Yep.
That's our psyche.
Well, we're just not used to being around them. Most people are not around wild animals ever. The great majority of people that live in cities are virtually never around anything other than pigeons and squirrels. They're just not around them. So our ideas of wild animals are like these beautiful things that you rarely see. Why would you want to kill one?
Yeah, and the interesting point about squirrels, urban squirrels versus wood squirrels. We shot a couple more episodes of Meateater that'll be coming out here in the next couple of weeks. And we took Helen and Brittany squirrel hunting, and their experience mostly with squirrels was urban.
Yeah.
And Helen had this, wow, they're way different than
they
urban
know what
squirrels. They're like not coming down. And of course, Brittany was talking about like rubbing acorns on her body, and maybe they'll come out and stuff like that. But completely different. Wild animal, they're out there making a living. They're out there surviving that whole thing. They aren't going to react the same way to human beings walking into their woods.
Well, animals are pliable. They're flexible, just like people are. And if you start feeding wild animals, they kind of become domesticated. There's a park right down here in North Hollywood. You could sit out in the park, and if you bring a bag of peanuts, the squirrels will literally come and take them from your hands like a little baby. And it's cool. I mean, those are different animals. Like the deer in my yard. Like my buddy came over one day, and there was this deer standing there, just standing. And he's like, "Dude, I didn't think that was a real deer. I thought you were fucking with me." Because he came over to my house, and we were gonna work out, and there's this deer standing there. I go, look at that. And he goes, what the fuck is that? I go, it's a deer. He's like, that's a real deer? Because he's a buck. And he just stand there looking at us. And he goes, okay, would you shoot that buck? I go, fuck no. That thing might as well be a pet.
Yeah.
Like, if I was starving, I'd shoot it. But that thing is not worried about me at all. It has never been attacked by a person. It doesn't associate people with danger. They're just standing there staring at me.
Yeah,
you can't
your
kill
hostas.
them. Yeah, you can't kill them. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Like that's you can if you have to survive, but that's not a game animal.
We have a rule. I don't think that you were up by my cabin, but Brian was, and my wife said, can you not kill him right here by the cabin?
You have a rule.
We have a rule.
But you had a beaver that you guys killed right there, right?
No, that beaver that we ate. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was up on a creek, not far from there. But
that's okay. She allows the beavers to die.
Well, yeah, she allows the muskrats to die too, who burrow into the dam and cause all kinds of damage.
Oh, so you
that.
want them to die?
Yeah, you get rid of them because they're causing their the issues.
By the way, how good does that goddamn beaver taste?
Absolutely, bar none, best wild meat I've ever eaten.
Really?
It's fantastic. Well, the
Never
way
had it.
Ranella cooked it,
Yeah.
he braised it and then slow cooked it like a stew. And I'm telling you, man, it was like the best beef stew you've ever had in your life. Like rich and flavorful. And again, just like we're talking about with organic beef versus regular, corn-fed. This is a wild animal with a wild, natural diet and a real healthy, big, fat beaver.
Yeah.
So text your wife. I mean, I've ate
Like a
raccoon.
beef.
Is it
It
like?
was
Whoa,
like beef.
slow down,
Raccoon's
son.
a whole nother.
It is a whole
down,
other ball
son.
game, but
You
it's
ate raccoon?
Well, yeah, it's a wild game thing.
Beef now.
I mean,
Wow.
bear. I mean, people.
Seriously.
One of the worst things.
Oh hell yes.
What?
Yes.
Fucking Wisconsin. I'm taking the shirt off.
Yeah, I noticed there's not a beaver in the middle of
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's a-
Start a beaver farm.
Muskrat.
There you go.
Yo,
Sustainable beaver.
When did you eat a raccoon, man?
Just at game feeds, they do it. We have bear feeds like Packers Bears weekend. They'll have a bear feed at the local tavern, and people bring in other stuff too.
Wait a
Wild
minute.
game, snake.
Hold the fuck on. First of all, let me just explain to people that are only listening. I asked Nate, I go, when have you eaten a raccoon? And Doug throws his hands up like I'm like, when have you had French fries? You ate French fries? Like, it's a fucking raccoon, man.
It's been a long time. It's
Okay.
been a long time. That's
So, what is you have a bear what?
well, every once in a while, when it's Packers Bears,
Right. You
big
guys eat a
rivalry.
bear?
They'll have at a local tavern. They'll have Newman's Bar and Grill. We'll plug those guys down in Hill Point. They've had bear feeds. For the Pack or Bears game.
There's a connection there.
And they'll people bring other stuff. And
they have a
there's
bear
wild game
feed.
feeds. I've had
It's a
rattlesnake.
feed. Yeah.
A feed, but you're calling it a feed.
Like a steak feed or it's just you feed a bunch of people and they sit
Okay.
down and get drunk and
Well,
eat a
how are
bunch
they
of shit.
cooking? How are they cooking the bear? What are they doing?
Probably roasting it. I mean,
The big
I've never
barrel
cooked
roasters.
one, yeah.
Yeah. That
So they
kind of
just
thing.
have a gigantic bear
barbecue. Yeah.
that they
Well,
barbecue.
no. I mean, it's parted up and that sort of thing.
it's good. It's good.
Well, bear is real tricky, right? You got to make sure that you,
That it's
you cook
well
it to the
cooked and
right
all that.
temperature.
Yep.
In Wisconsin
Everything's-
as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's everywhere. Is
Yeah. Yeah.
trichinosis?
It's a concern.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of a Wisconsin tradition. I saw your
To
eyes
cook a
light up
bear
when
or
you heard
raccoon.
a game feed. I
Okay.
mean, there might be, and it could be bear. It could be back in the day when there was more when the raccoon hides were more valuable, and there's an ebb and flow to that market, of course. Well, you got all these hides, and what do you do with the carcasses?
Right.
And I mean, so a certain amount of them are being eaten.
What does it taste like?
It's pretty greasy.
Yeah,
Greasy?
really greasy.
Yeah.
Was it a good grease? Is it good for you?
It's one of
it a
those
healthy
things.
fat?
There's a little gaminess to it. It's one of those things you got to get used to it. And I don't eat enough bear meat to get used to it. But
I like bear. No, I've had
Yeah.
bear.
Oh,
No,
we-
I'm
oh,
talking about raccoon.
oh, raccoon,
Yeah.
raccoon. Oh, I'm sorry.
See, I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
think. Are you talking about bear or raccoon?
I way prefer bear.
Yeah,
to
raccoon is super gamey.
Okay,
Yeah,
'cause
it's kind of nutty in a
I
weird
didn't
way.
think that bear was greasy at all. Bear to me tasted like almost like a beef.
Where did you?
Alberta.
Yeah. So what's that in Wisconsin, in the Midwest, where there's hunting going on? They're doing a lot of baiting of them with like old donuts and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I remember Steve talking about I've never bear hunted anywhere. How he doesn't like taking is it spring bears or because they're eating
Bait.
old.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, you're
whatever
talking
the
about
timing is of
the blueberry
salmon.
bears or whatever.
Yeah.
He loves the blueberry bears, but not the because their meat tastes like what they ate.
Right.
Holy moly!
Hey, that's what we're talking about.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy though?
Yeah.
That Ranella's show. Have you ever seen that show where he
I
shot?
haven't.
You
I
ever see
don't.
the
I
show,
don't watch
period?
much TV
Oh, okay.
at all.
Well, he shot a bear in Alaska in the fall, and it had been just feasting on blueberries. And he was saying that this is the best meat, bar none, in the world.
Bar none.
And he was saying that you open this bear up and you smell blueberries, and it's like a sweet tasting meat. And then and it just really, I mean. You eat a burger, you don't think about it. You drink a soda, you don't think about it. But that is your cells. You are literally supplying nutrients to your cells through your food.
Yeah.
And when you eat, like, I used to work with this dude who used to drink a lot of carrot juice, and his fucking hands turned orange. Like, his skin started turning orange because he was eating like 3 or 4 glasses of carrot juice a day.
How orange are we talking?
Orange as fuck, like weird, like spray tan, like Jersey
Cheetos,
Shore.
Cheetos orange or
No, like an orange, like a carrot. You know, he made a jerk off motion. I don't know why you jerk
I don't
off
know
with
why
Cheetos.
that was either. I
How
saw
do
it
you
on the corner of
connect
my eye.
jerking off with Cheetos?
well, that's a joke. You know the.
Okay.
It is. What I don't understand. The Cheetos and jerking off? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, it's kind of one of those things, you know.
Is it like a bear feed? Like you got to be in Wisconsin to understand it?
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Cheetos. I give you a
It's one of
bag of
our
Cheetos.
pastimes.
You go in the
It's one of our
bathroom and I hear
pastimes.
grunting.
I don't know, man. There's some stuff about this guy I didn't know before I brought him on. So, yeah.
Cheetos. Forget Cheetos.
Yeah, forget talking about that
but it's
anymore.
that
Forget
kind
the
of food. I mean,
Cheetos.
if you're eating Cheetos all day or potato chips or whatever the fuck it is, that is literally supplying your cells.
Yeah.
And we don't think about it that way. We just think about this tastes good. I am me. I am Doug. Doug eats cheeseburger because cheeseburger tastes good. But a cheeseburger literally is supplying your body. You know, I started this diet recently. This is called the Primal Blueprint Diet. This guy on the podcast named Mark Sisson, and he is an advocate of no grains, no bread, no pasta, no rice, no nothing. Mostly fats. You get your fats from avocados, from healthy fats from beef and chicken or whatever the fuck you eat, and coconut oil, things along those lines, MCT oil. And I've been on it now for 2 weeks, and it's pretty fascinating. First of all, it took me a while to like adjust from going on a carbohydrate-based energy to a fat-based energy, getting my energy from fats. My body fat's decreased pretty significantly. I lost at least 6 pounds now, and I'm eating like normal amounts, but I'm just eating fat and proteins and a lot of vegetables and no sugars at all, none, zero. I'm not eating any processed sugar. I eat occasional piece of fruit, blueberries and things along those lines, but it's mostly vegetables and meat that I'm eating and a lot of avocados.
Wow.
But my cells obviously are getting nutrients off of this, off of healthy fats. And what he found is he had arthritis. He also had irritable bowel syndrome. Those things went away when he cut grains out of his diet and we stopped eating processed sugar.
So it's like
Those things went away.
inflammation type thing. Yeah,
inflammation. Yeah, and that these healthy fats for your body, like coconut oil, things along those lines, is really the best fuel for your body. And your body gets into a state of ketosis, which takes about 2 weeks. Which I just started getting into. I just started getting into the state of ketosis. And your body, once it reaches this state of ketosis, gets its energy primarily from fat. And it's a more normal, natural way for your body to respond. And your body can shift. Like, you know, your body's very flexible. It can shift from a glucose-based, carbohydrate-based fuel system to a fat-based fuel system. So this is what my body has just started to do. And I committed to this. I was going to do a month, but I just decided to make it 2 months. So I'm committing to this for 2 months, and I'm going to talk about it and see what it's like. But I'm sold 2 weeks in. I don't like it in the fact that if I go to a restaurant and someone's got spaghetti and meatballs next to me, I'm like, fuck, I can't eat the meatballs. Fuck, I can't eat the spaghetti. Like I can't eat any sugar, no desserts.
Does that seem different to you? And what I mean is when you smell like a carbohydrate like that,
like a craving.
Is all of a sudden, whoa.
Well,
whereas maybe
no.
not so much before?
No, it's the opposite. This is what's really strange about it. What they've said, what people have hypothesized and the theories are that your gut bacteria controls a lot of your appetite. And this is one of the reasons why I used to be stuffed at the end of a meal, and I would still want sugar. I'd still want some candy, or I'd still, right?
That's me, man.
It's awful, right? You still want some pie. Oh, bring that fucking pie over here. You know?
Yes.
Well, now I don't. It's weird. because of this
adjustment,
shit, my body, taking plenty of probiotics, drinking a lot of kombucha, things along those lines, taking some probiotic supplements, you introduce healthy bacteria into your stomach and your gut, and because of that, it shifts like what you're hungry for. It's very strange. Like bread to me looks like why don't you eat stuffing out of a mattress? Like it looks like nonsense to me. It's very strange because I used to see like bread. Someone bring out like a restaurant, nice loaf of bread and butter. I'm like, oh, give me that, son.
Yes.
And I'd be all excited, slap some butter on that bitch and eat it up. Now I look at it like that's not even food. Like it said, it doesn't register to me as
in
food.
a 2-week period of time. You had
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
And you were such an unhealthy son of a bitch before that.
Well, I'm saying. I mean, I think part of it must be psychological that I've decided that this isn't food. That I've made a shift in my mind because I'm not eating it. I haven't eaten it in 2 weeks. But I think there's a real good argument that it's gut bacteria. That's a big part of it because the sugar. Like they had like a dessert tray thing, and they brought it out at a restaurant I was at the other day. You know, like they at a fancy place, they bring you like, would you like this? Is this one here and this one here? The apple praline, and none of it looked good. It all looked like nonsense to me. Whereas before, I'd be like, what am I gonna fuck my body up with?
I got to figure this out. I got to take this home with me.
Very interesting stuff. And I wanted to experiment with it because the guy was fascinating. He's very intelligent. And I said, well, what does it hurt for me to try this out? I thought it'd be an interesting topic of discussion to do it for 60 days or so, and then maybe even have him back on or have someone else on that advocates it. And I've read people that advocate carbohydrate-rich diets, and it seems to me that your body is pretty flexible and your body can exist on a bunch of different types of fuel. And people get really dogmatic about it. You know, like you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. And I think there's also biodiversity, right? There's different people come from different climates. They come from different parts of the world. Originally, their ancestors did. And I think their bodies have become more acclimated to those types of foods. And that was like the big issue with Native Americans when the Europeans showed up with alcohol. And they literally didn't have the genes to process this stuff. Whereas Irish people process that shit like that, you know?
Yeah.
Italians.
It was interesting that you said that about probiotic because I've been taking a probiotic for about 18 months now. Of all the places where I got this advice was from my accountant. And,
wow.
Yeah.
How weird. Is it buddy? Or is it like, I went over your taxes and what you need is
probiotics. No, it's one of her clients, but I had been sick and she said something about probiotics. And honest to God, 18 months I've been taking a probiotic every morning and I haven't done anything else different, but I've been not necessarily healthier, but less ill. Not ill at all, really.
There's an article I read once about skin flora, and it was in regards to grappling. Because with jiu-jitsu and with wrestling, a big issue is ringworm and even staph infection. I've gotten both.
Really?
Yeah, man, it sucks. The staph was real scary because my friend Tate Fletcher spotted it. We were at an airport. We were hanging out, getting ready to go on our plane, and I just had my foot sitting up on my knee, and he was looking at the bottom of my calf. And he goes, "Hey, man, what's going on with your leg?" I go, "What?" He's like, He's like, "What's all this?" I go, "What is it?" He's like, "There's little pimples on my leg." I'm like, "I don't know." He goes, "Dude, that looks like staph." I go, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Yeah, I don't like that, man. Go get that checked out." Because he fought, has been grappling his whole life, and he had caught it before. I had never caught it. I caught ringworm before, and I knew what that looked like. And so I was like, "This is fucking pimples. Like, what is it?" He's like, "I'm telling you, I think that's staph." So I go immediately to a dermatologist, take his advice, and the guy goes, "Yup, get on some fucking antibiotics." He gives me these horse pills of death. This stuff's awful. These, first of all, antibiotics when you have staph wrecks your entire system because it doesn't just kill the staph; it kills all the healthy flora too.
Yeah.
So
gotta start over. What
they say to counter that is to take probiotics once you're done with your whole cycle, but also to prevent it in the future, you take healthy bacteria like a lot of acidophilus, different forms of probiotics, and you are essentially giving your body soldiers to fight off infection. And the skin flora changes when you take like high doses of healthy acidophilus and things along those lines. Your skin, it's also like for people that are vegan, there's some different probiotics like raw sauerkraut. Like raw sauerkraut is really good. Kimchi is another one that's really good.
Makes sense.
Fantastic probiotic. You're essentially taking in live organisms that become a part of your body, and they're soldiers. And these live organisms fight off against shitty bacteria. It's amazing stuff.
Well, part of the reason I was convinced, other than I get my medical advice from my accountant,
on the cheap,
is in the other work that I do, I build and manage athletic fields. And there's a huge movement to go towards organic fertilization or cultural practices on athletic fields. You know, this one facility that I manage, before every tournament, we'll get emails and calls from parents who are bringing their 8-year-old and say, well, we're coming in from wherever, and we would like to know what's been applied to your fields. My son or daughter has a issue with herbicide intolerance or whatever. And I take that shit really seriously.
Yeah.
We started using compost from both a facility nearby from the county, but also from a supplier, and applying that as a part of our regime. We're able to cut back on fertilizer. And the other thing that was really interesting is that a lot of the pathogens that we have issue with and you see them on golf courses, they get different kinds of fungus that affect the grass because you're putting water on it and you're feeding the shit out of it. And by putting that compost on there and providing, essentially the organisms that are good for the soil, we're feeding the soil, not the plant, which nitrogen that they, synthetic nitrogen or does. And so what ends up happening is we're feeding that soil. And so now we've got a whole environment there that turf grass has got an opportunity to utilize everything that's in that soil, and it's healthier. And, we're kind of going the other direction in everything from farming to growing grass for kids to play soccer on.
Well, I know a guy who lived near a golf course growing up, and the pesticides that they used on the golf course infected the water supply, and he got bone cancer and cancer throughout his neighborhood. Everyone in his neighborhood was affected. Someone they knew got cancer. It was rampant. And it was just people that were drinking the water that came from this area where it had been contaminated because of a fucking golf course.
Yeah, leaching in. And the one company that I work with has been part of a construction of a golf course that from day one was, and it's actually certified organic, but it was been a part of their process all the way along. And they control, the amount of traffic on it and all of those sort of things too, but it's a beautiful golf course. And they haven't used any pesticides or synthetic fertilizers on it.
One of the things that they had brought up in that same article about organic meat being healthier was the incorporation of clover in with grass, and that somehow or another clover helps. It helps sustain like a nitrogen balance with the grasses. Like,
it's a clover is a nitrogen fixing plant. So if you, in a pasture, we introduce clover into our pastures. And so it fixes nitrogen into the soil that's then available for the grasses. And white clovers and a lot of the things that I actually plant in some of the food plot stuff that we do for wildlife.
For deer, yeah.
Yeah, for deer. It's sweet, it tastes good, and it's also providing nitrogen to the plants that need it.
And that's a big problem with things like gigantic fields of only grain, of only corn, or of only wheat. It's not natural for one plant species to be
monoculture.
That's not normal, right? That's not natural, and it's kind of like what you were talking about when you're talking about these really interesting, diverse ecosystems that are created by these organic farms, like this one that you were highlighting earlier.
Yeah, and so it is. It's a complete ecosystem. It's a closed circle.
That's how it's supposed to be.
Well, the thing that gets me is that this Mark Shepard. I mean, I've just paged through it. Doug's read more of it than I have, but I mean, you look at this and you read it and it makes sense, and you're like, wow, this guy's a genius. But then you think about like ancient civilizations were doing things along these lines. Where did we lose that? Where did that go away?
Well, it seems like we lost it with this factory farming, and we also lost it when we started putting people in cities.
Yeah.
I think cities are a real big part of our disconnect, and also awesome. I love cities.
Yeah.
I love to be able to go to the movies.
You got to implement.
Yeah, I like getting on the highway.
Like the guy you mentioned, mentioned, Joe, that grows this shit
Joel
in the medians.
Salatin?
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Oh no, that was Ron Finley.
You know, you've heard of Joel Salatin?
He's been on the podcast.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to reference him. He's
amazing.
He's got some amazing books. You know, he's got a lot of books out there.
He also had a really interesting strategy for like letting pigs and all these different animals graze. Is that what he does is he sets up this perimeter fence, this large, like mildly charged fence. So if they go to it, it irritates them, so they don't run over the fence. And then he moves it. He moves the fence, and they graze in a new area. So they don't just destroy.
Rotational grazing.
Yeah, they don't just, and they're living as if they were wild. They're essentially grazing off acorns, things along those lines, and just giant areas where they roam and forage, and they eat just like a wild pig.
Yeah.
And because of that, their flesh is very different.
That's what you got in your freezer now, dude.
Well, this is elk, but I have a wild pig in my freezer at home.
From that we brought you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pig?
That's how we pasture them. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the way to do it. I mean, it's a different kind of meat. It looks different, you know? I mean, it has a deeper, darker, richer color. And that's one of the things that I noticed when Renell and I shot a pig at the Tohon Ranch. It was thick with fat from acorns, and its texture, the meat was like a dark red, and it was delicious. It's a different animal.
Isn't it interesting, like with beef, I still eat the occasional beef that I might not know where it came from.
Right.
Not very often, but there's one place, one restaurant that nearby our place that I go to, and he finishes his beef with corn, but it's mostly grass fed, but he's still sort of old school with.
And he does that to marble it.
Yeah. I taste the difference between. Of course, you taste the difference between venison because really, again, I don't have this wide experience of hunting in different areas and having meat from different areas, so I am excited about your elk. But so the venison to grass-fed beef to corn-fed beef, and it's been a long time since I've had something that like I said, where I didn't know where it came from. But I can tell you when it was fat cattle, they call them. I feel like after I get done eating a piece of meat like that, like I have a little prime rib or something when I go out on a Saturday night, I feel like I should take a knife and like scrape that fat off my tongue. It just has a completely different taste, and I'm not interested in it anymore. And so my, taste has changed that way.
It's very tender,
man.
but it's also because that animal's dying. I mean, that animal, you're eating a sumo wrestler. You're eating a slob.
What's that, where they massage them?
Yeah, Kobe beef.
Yeah.
Or Wagyu. It's the more common. Is that how you say it?
Just big.
Wagyu. I don't like that stuff, man. I've had it before. I mean, it's okay. But it's so fucking soft and weird.
Yeah.
It's like, why? How the fuck is this muscle carrying this animal around?
It's gelatinous.
Yeah. It's weird.
I'll take it to even more of an extreme, and that is veal. There was down the road from our old friend who had the issue with us when we were hunting, and he would call and leave me those crazy messages. Before he owned that place, it was owned by another guy who raised veal. And when I was younger, I helped out up there once in a while. And how you helped out was to help them load the veal. Those animals are in a cage where they essentially can't, or a box where they can barely turn around. And they're being fed, a milk replacer, a powdery that you mix with water, and it's kind of a liquid, and that's all they're getting. And the best looking veal calves were the last animal I ever wanted to eat. I mean, and it smelled bad. There was nothing good about it.
The muscles aren't developed. They don't want them to develop.
It's a crazy thing. I don't understand it. I don't understand how it got started, and I don't understand why people keep eating it.
Well, people eat lutefisk. I mean, that's weird. Lutefisk.
What is that?
It's like, it's
I thought
like
you were saying
fish.
ludicrous. I was like, what did he do wrong?
Fish in what is it? Lye?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, yeah, it's a Norwegian thing. It's a survival thing. The Vikings did it on ships and stuff, but people still, it's a tradition thing. But
so it's like
literally
a way
soaked
of
in lye.
it?
Yeah,
It's lye.
Yes, I mean it.
But isn't lye poisonous?
This is real.
What in the fuck is this?
And it's weird. I mean, you want to talk gelatinous, dude.
My friend Lauren Hansen is standing up with his hands in the air right now. He's an old Norwegian.
Norwegians are awesome. Man. I just got to say that.
Oh my God! What?
But that's
is
weird.
This?
Yeah.
Pairing wine.
Look at
with lutefisk. Oh God! It looks like jizz. Look at it. It's like slime.
Yeah,
It's like snail slime.
And I've never had veal, but I've had this, and it's got to be.
What is it
no
like?
thanks.
Yeah, what is this like? But this is just.
Well, it was something they did to survive.
Yeah,
and it's just tradition now. But people.
What does it taste like?
I can't even describe.
I think I blocked it out of my mind.
Is that bad?
Well, see what in the Norwegian areas of Wisconsin, they have these dinners, lutefisk dinners for fundraisers and such. But they also have they have other things. So you try, my whole
raise
thing
a lot of money.
was out of respect. I'd take a bite of lutefisk, and then I wash that down with some Swedish meatballs and
right
lefse, just soak and just get it out of your mouth. It's one of those things like.
What's the other thing you wash down with Swedish meatballs and what?
Lefse, it's like a little, isn't it a potato bread type, almost like a tortilla. It's like a Norwegian tortilla.
Food show here? You guys are eating raccoons and fucking
ludicrous.
Smelt feeds. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
smelt feeds.
A smelt feed.
Yeah.
Little itty bitty fish.
They're like little tiny fish. You scoop them up in giant nets,
Deep fry
right?
them. Deep fry them, yeah.
And you eat the whole thing, right? Guts and all.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
What is that like?
It's really good. I mean, we got our wrestling club.
Oh, not so good, says Doug.
I
like it. I like it. Well, yeah, it's not the favorite thing, but I mean,
it's not.
You fry anything and it's pretty good. I mean,
deep fry like with bread and all that jazz.
Yeah,
I guess they do.
Tartar sauce. You put a dozen of them on a bun and chow down, make some money for the wrestling club.
Well, you got to do what you got to do if you're
Go
hungry.
Beavers.
There's a TV show. I think.
How do you get some money from the wrestling club from fucking? How do you make this connection?
Oh, it's a fundraiser. Yeah, that's what we do. That's how we make money. We have feeds, lutefisk feeds, steak feeds, bear feed. And it's
not real creative when it comes to raising money, I guess. Although we have the Cazenovia. This is one plug I do want to put in. The Cazenovia Turkey Busters Fishery coming up this weekend.
Turkey Busters Fishery. What is a turkey buster?
Well, it's a sportsman's club. I don't think we have a website or anything, so I wouldn't look it up. But so it's a sportsman's club, and in Cazenovia, which is 250 people, it's sort of the Lions Club, the Knights of Columbus, the Rotary. It's everybody put together, and it's just this group of dudes who are really into turkey hunting.
Okay.
And
they call themselves the Turkey Busters?
Turkey Busters, yeah. And why do we have a fishery? Well, we have this little lake, Lee Lake, there in Cazenovia. And one of the things that we do is with the money that we raise is stock it with walleyes and other game fish. And so one of the things that we do is have this fishery, which is on the ice. So it's essentially an ice fishing tournament would be the wrong word. Although there are prizes for like the biggest bluegill and the biggest bass and that kind of thing. But mostly it's a thing where people come to and you have raffles and it's the social event of the season in Cazenovia.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Jesus.
Just FYI, Doug, they are online, but all they have all they have is the phone number and contact. This is at Cazenovia Memorial Park. Contact Chuck Keller.
Don't put the number online.
No.
Whatever you do, we've already said too much. If they have a website, they're getting dick pics right now sent to them as you speak. Wow.
But, yeah, so those are different ways that, and some of the stuff that we've also done is bought and donated like Hoyt archery bows or Matthews bows to the school's physical education program.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome that they still do that.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Yeah, so. This is a little organization of a bunch of guys who get together it depends on the time of the year, once or twice a month.
Well, there's certainly a benefit to having a small community like that where everybody really does care about the welfare of the community and cares about all these different things like wrestling team needing money for uniforms and things along those lines. We lose a lot of that when you have big cities. There's so much to gain in a big city, but there's so much to lose, too. And it's like we were talking earlier about the diffusion of responsibility that you have when there's 20 million people. You see somebody with their fucking car broken down the side of the road, I don't even think about stopping.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope this asshole is AAA. Pass by. But if you're on some country road and you see someone broken down, you think one or two things. I hope this guy's not a serial killer, and I should probably try to help him.
Yeah,
exactly.
Those are the two things you think.
And the other thing out in our territory when you're driving, or in our area when you're driving around, is you wave to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, so you're driving around. It might not be putting your hand up like this or anything, but at least you're driving along.
Give a little
and
nod.
you go like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the one thing.
Well, that's nice. You know,
Yeah, it
and
is.
that is definitely missing on the highway, because otherwise you'd be fucking.
Yeah, you still get the
carpal
one
tunnel.
finger sign out on the highway around here. But
Well,
it's
if
a
you were
little
fucking
different.
waving to everybody that passed you, your hands would break. You know?
Yeah, it's
Cities
you
are
know,
weird.
Yeah. No, it's all weird, isn't it?
It is weird. People are weird, but cities are especially weird because I don't think this is a normal thing. Well, we've only had them for the last couple hundred years in this sort of magnitude that we have now, like with New York and LA and things along those lines. Just to have so many people jammed into an area like this, and as we started this conversation, have a complete disconnect as to where your food comes from, and that the food is coming from life, whether it's plant life or whether it's animal life. Your food comes from life. Life eats life, and that is reality.
Jack London
Is that
talks
what he
about
said?
that. Yeah, it's the sea wolf. We were just talking about this. Yeah.
What did he say?
Well, it's this character. It's this old pirate in this book called the Sea Wolf.
I knew he was going to get a pirate into this conversation.
Are you a fan of pirates?
Yeah. Who isn't, man? Pirates are awesome. But I mean, maybe not the new age ones, the Somalis or whatever.
Oh yeah,
but
they're a little different. But they're those are not without my sympathy as well.
Yeah, everybody's got an agenda and everybody's got a reason to fight.
Well, they have a very. We'll get into that.
There's
in a minute.
This specific pirate. His whole, he's a loner, and his whole thing in the conversation throughout the book is he talks about it as a yeast. Life eats life, and his whole contention is, what the fuck matters? Life eats life. I mean, you could make an argument like, you're going to be dead, you're going to be dead, you're going to be dead. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck what happens? I mean, that's not a very nice way to look at things, but it's a fact,
It is a fact, but also this moment right now is enjoyable.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not.
I have a problem with that sort of absolute sort of, worrying about the end. No,
absolutely.
How about the moment is enjoyable?
Nothing else at all.
Camaraderie and friendship and a good meal with friends is one of the best things you can have in life. Adventures and things that you enjoy, activities that you like to participate in, those are very enjoyable. And I think that's what life is about. Life is about these friendships and these enjoyable moments that we have with each other. So there's absolute ideas that people have about what is the point, man?
Yeah,
it's all going to end, man. Well, okay, you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point in playing the game? The game's going to be over one day.
Yeah.
Like, do you not enjoy the fucking game? Enjoy the game, man.
These
Enjoy
are some of
the
those
moments.
kids we saw sitting on the steps today. Just sitting there.
Oh, in Hollywood?
Yeah,
they're
just sitting
poisoned.
in-
These poor
Yeah.
fucks. They're poisoned by the brake dust that's fucking flowing through the air everywhere. That shit's terrible for you.
There's definitely different smells out here, man.
Fucking brake dust is terrible. It's one of the one things that people don't talk about living in urban environments that you don't. When you go to your car, that shit, if you have a wheel and you see that stuff on the outside of your wheel, you're breathing that.
Yeah.
You're breathing that everywhere, especially if you live in New York or if you live in LA and there's constant traffic going by you. Every time they hit the brakes, a little bit of fucking dust gets up in the air. And that stuff, you're dealing with millions and millions of cars. This stuff permeates the environment.
Yeah.
It's terrible for you. The voluntary Coast Guard of Somalia, that's what the pirates called themselves. The reason why they started doing pirating in Somalia is because they were fishermen. They were fishermen, and these assholes from Europe and Russia were dumping toxic waste off their shores. Nuclear waste, toxic chemical waste, and it was killing all the fish. So what they started doing was kidnapping the people that were in the boats that were doing the dumping. So these fishermen who were fucking starving to death because they all of a sudden their waters were polluted, they started going after these guys and kidnapping them. Then they realized, hey, we get way more fucking money from kidnapping people than we do from fishing. They became pirates.
Yeah.
And so they also started taking this stuff called cat, and this is it's a narcotic. It's a stimulant that they take. It's like a plant that they chew, and it gives them like it's like a fucking meth type plant. I don't know the exact. Pull that up. I think it's KHAT, but it's a stimulant that they chew all the time. It's one of the reasons why these people are so. There it is. Cat to be banned in the UK. You see, like this guy's chewing on these leaves, and it produces. Pull up a website or a web description instead of an image, and we'll find out what is the actual. Go to all. Instead of images.
Look at the guy's jaw. He's got a big league chew in there.
Yeah, this is I seen in that movie Captain Phillips. Yeah, so this this stuff it's a drug, and these people take it. It's an alkaloid. Here it is. Cathinone, or it's an amphetamine-like stimulant, which is said to cause excitement, loss of appetite, and euphoria. And so these guys take this, they get jacked on this cat, K-H-A-T, and they would go out and fucking kidnap people.
Well, that's the thing, too. My initial reaction when I said, except Somali pirates, that's how we tell history is from, Captain Phillips' side. And that's like the Howard Zinn thing. Howard Zinn tells it from the other side. So let me retract that. I like Somali pirates a little bit, too. Everybody's got a... they've got a reason to fight.
They got fucked. For the longest time, they were incredibly peaceful people. Somalians were very peaceful. They weren't out there robbing and trying to jack people. They were fishermen. And when the Europeans started dumping that stuff off their shores, they had to take a new approach. They had to adjust.
Adapt, improvise, overcome.
Yeah, it's just. But again, where's that coming from? Coming from large-scale human beings living in these giant civilizations, creating waste that they don't know what to do with. So some dickhole decides to dump it off the coast of Africa because they don't have any say in the matter. They didn't want to dump it in the London Bay,
the backyard.
Yeah. So they decided to.
We do that here too.
Is London have a bay? Did I make
they loosen standards so that companies can put more in.
Well, that's a big deal with New York City as well. The Hudson River's fucking deserted wasteland. It was at one point in time. They're dredging it up now and starting to clean it and trying to really impose very strict regulations on the amount of waste that gets in it. But
and these large animal facilities, same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do we put this stuff? And you see these trucks going up and down, these big tank trucks full of shit.
And they have to haul it really far because they don't have enough. They're renting land all over. Wow. So they're hauling it. That was a big issue in our areas is the weight on the roads.
Oh, yeah.
And so then, and the farmers, they didn't want to be taxed or anything. So I believe there's a compromise where it wasn't a road tax, but they made them have another axle. So it spread the weight out and wasn't, tearing the hell out of the roads.
Oh, so the actual physical weight on the road, is that why they go to
these
a weigh
giant
station
tankers
and they have to weigh I always wondered why they weigh them.
Well, out in our neck of the woods again, a lot of the roads were just gravel roads, and then over time they did this thing called tar and chip. So a gravel road is not built, it doesn't have any particular engineer. Well, I suppose it has some engineering standards, but
flat
not
as possible. Yeah.
And there aren't any engineering standards, but gravel roads are a bitch to keep up. So they started to tar and chip them. So it's so it's
what does that mean?
Poor man's blacktop. So you put or asphalt. So you put this tar down and then go over the top of it, and I could have it
pea gravel type
with
thing.
Pea gravel stuff, and it all binds together. And then over time, people keep driving on it, and over time, it actually seals it up. Oh. And if you're just driving over it with cars and pickup trucks, it's okay. But now here comes, a big tanker truck or a big tanker, behind a monster tractor, and it's breaking down the sides of the roads, and it ends up being an issue for us. And as Nate said, they're having to haul this stuff further and further because you can only put so much shit on so much ground, and the shit that they are putting out there is, it's liquid manure that's going into these tanks, or into these holding facilities. Liquid manure.
Yeah. Oh, it's nuts.
I just found a new way to torture terrorists.
And there's a double standard with it. So you got this massive amount of liquid manure, and they're not going to store it, they're not going to compost it or anything like that. So like right now, we've got a nice snowpack, 12 inches, and they're spreading it on top of the snow. So, and just to illustrate the double standard, I got family that is in the septic business. So if they go out, if they spread this shit on a certain slope,
human
shit.
From like holding tanks or pumping out.
So they spread it on the snow?
Well, see, here's the thing, though. They spread it on the snow, and if they do it over...
I love you.
If they do it over...
He said that because Jamie just pulled up liquid manure spreaders and toolbars for the people that are listening
and see how they've added axles? That's a new thing. They used to have one axle,
just spread the
and
weight
it was
out.
just too much on the road. But so a septic dude, he goes out there to get rid of this human shit, and if he does it on a certain grade, he'll get a giant fine from the DNR. But a farmer goes out and does it, and it's so
human shit. A farmer can dump human
shit. No. A farmer can go dump cow shit. And the thing is, in the end, shit is shit is shit.
No, but it's not though, right? Because cow shit is just they're eating grass. So like manure is
not in those facilities. They're not. They're
all
kinds of different proteins.
They're eating
so, and obviously when the snow melts, that a lot of that shit is going into the stream. So like where Doug and I, we really value our shit. You know, we keep it, we compost it, we turn it into something with value. That's a waste. It's going into the water and polluting, and it's a waste of money.
Did you ever see the drone footage that they did of this pig farm? This guy.
I've seen some. I don't know.
First
not
of all,
particular.
I think
maybe
some that you would probably agree with, and I agree with, and those people in the Cowspiracy documentary certainly agree with, is that there's something evil about these ag-gag laws.
Oh, yeah.
It's this crazy shit where you're not supposed to film atrocities that are being committed in these factory farms. Well, this guy got a drone, and he flew it over this pig farm, and they have a goddamn lake of pig shit and piss. It is gigantic, and they have these things where the pigs live, these cages, and then here's a guy. He's gonna do it right here. He's for people that want it. Spy drone exposes Smithfield Foods. Say that up. Put that up. Smithfield Foods factory farm. So spy drones expose Smithfield Foods factory farms. The lagoon is a good word because it sounds dirty. The lake of pig
cesspool,
shit and piss and whatever. Yeah, it's like a red color. It's disgusting.
And look at these. I mean, imagine how many animals are in one of those sheds, and they don't see sunlight. You know,
it's fucked. It's fucked. It's not human. It's not humane. It's not ethical. It's not right. But to bring it all home, all right. Look at this. It's the lagoon or the color.
Does it just sit there? Do they ever do anything with it, or does it just sit there and bubble?
What did you say, Jamie?
They spray it around to the house. So I was going to try to find a picture of this thing.
Oh, and the person, and they talk to the neighbor.
Yeah. They spray it in the air.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It gets in the air and goes into people's houses, and I think some of the neighbors are saying it gets in their house and they can't even breathe and they need to leave the area.
Fucking here's
there's a fear factor thing.
Can we hear
can
this
stand
guy?
in the...
Hear this guy, former pig factory owner. Let me hear this guy.
I don't know. The sound's not up. I don't know.
Come on, Dawn Webb.
No, there's no sound.
Something wrong?
Yeah.
There's no sound?
Well, you can just see the way it's moving within the facility there too.
Fix it.
Oh, there's an issue with the computer.
Strange.
Yeah, man, it's dark. It's evil. And it's when all of a sudden these things don't get treated like a life, they get treated like a commodity. Yeah, and I guess there's levels, right? To people that are vegans, they would say, well, any animal that you would be willing to raise and then ship off and sell, like, why are you any better than this guy who's got these things stuffed into this thing? I mean, yeah, your animals are living a normal life, but then eventually you're going to kill them anyway. You know, whereas... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know that.
And I have a friend who's a vegan, and in fact, one of my heifer calves is named after her. And she's honored by that, actually, because she knows that one's never going to be, or probably won't be butchered.
Probably is a good word.
Probably won't be butchered. But unless she gets a prolapse cervix or something like that. But
so if your pussy's broken, you're done for. Cows.
Yeah, you got to be specific there, Joe.
Yeah. So to say that there's not a difference is
there's definitely
just not paying
difference.
attention. But no, I mean, if that's what the argument is, then you're not paying attention, and we can't have a conversation about it.
I just think they think that the ultimate goal at the end is definitely death, or the ultimate result for these animals.
The ultimate goal is life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these same people don't want you to be shooting wild animals either.
Well, even wolves, which is hilarious.
Right. Well,
the wolf one is hilarious because there's so much ignorance involved in people's idea of what a wolf is and why there's so many folk tales and stories that involve bad wolves killing people.
There was I just read this. Two wolves. I believe it was Idaho. We can check in it if we want to. But 2 wolves killed 176 sheep or something like that in one night.
Oh yeah, for fun. Well, that's the thing that wolves do. And then they're having a real big problem with this in Yellowstone and in a lot of places that have elk, is that they don't kill, like a cat will kill a wolf, or a cat will kill an elk rather, and he will eat that elk for a long period of time. He'll bury it, and he'll eat it, and a wolf kills it, eats a little bit, and then kills another one, and then kills another one, and kills another one, and they do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And one of these guys that I know at Hoyt was telling me about this wolf that had killed this cow, and the way it did it was it attacked the cow elk, attacked it, tore its guts apart, and then backed off and just watched and sat and didn't eat and watched this thing struggle and try to walk away and tried to walk into this river, tried to get away, and then it would go after it again and tear it apart a little bit more and then back off again. They do it for fun, and it's what they're designed for. They're killing machines, and they enjoy it. and they're beautiful. And I'm not saying that they're evil and we should kill them all and eradicate them from the face of the world, but there's something strange about that kind of animal. They're not environmentalists, they're not conservationists, they're fucking wolves. and wolves are dangerous. They have an essential place in a very diverse ecosystem, but the top of the food chain is fucking human beings, period. And when human beings decide, you know what? There's too many of these goddamn wolves that are killing 100+ sheep in a night. Or my friend Mike Hawkridge, who lives up in BC, his neighbor, their fucking cow got taken out. A cow got taken out by wolves. And you're in BC where he lives, there's no tag limit for wolves. You can shoot as many as you want. You can shoot wolves. It could be your hobby. You know, what do? I go bowling. I shoot wolves. Like they're fucking trying to take out as many wolves as they can.
And when we were talking about coyotes before, and personally, I've shot a few coyotes in my day.
How dare you?
And but it's not something I go out and pursue. Necessarily, it's more opportunistic or whatever.
It's fucking with Roadrunner, and you got to take him out.
Yeah, and
Anvil.
Acme.
Doug's just like.
And it's sort of like the deer thing. When I was listening to various arguments about deer, well, one of the reasons we have so many deer in Wisconsin and in other agricultural areas is because of agriculture,
right.
And they are highly adaptive.
Yes, and that's a really big point because they're not even essentially wild. They're really kind of like a farm animal in a lot of ways. And it was one of the things that Steve brought up on the show that we talked about. I don't know if it ever made the air. Did that make the air? We were talking about how these animals are essentially, in a lot of ways, they're like a livestock almost.
Well,
non-fenced in.
Oh yeah, you saw the trail camera pictures that I sent you of different deer that I had. Different bucks on things. Well, you're not going to see that out in,
of course,
Idaho or Utah or whatever. Well, maybe you do, but no, I mean, and
well, they're very different than like the mule deer that we were talking about before the show started that Ranella killed. That was on his show recently, which is enormous, beautiful, majestic public land mule deer that he killed. Mule deer, they found, will travel 150 miles during a season. They really migrate in incredible
and again,
distances.
probably for a lot of the same reasons because they have to.
For food,
for food and for whatever. Whereas an older a deer gets in our area, at least my experience has been, so the older a deer gets in our area, the less it moves. So if you have a buck that you're managing 4 bigger bucks and you start seeing one that maybe has a distinctive antler or something, so you can tell it from other ones, you'll begin to realize, that great big one that I shot, I saw that deer for 2 years. He lived in about a 40-acre area.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And you're just waiting for him to slip up.
And he did.
There's a lot of these hunting shows where they name the deers.
Yeah.
They'll call this one
Megabuck.
Old Forky and whatever. They'll have names for these animals and they'll target them. We're looking for Lucky. We're trying to get Lucky.
Yeah.
And they'll have these shows and like this is so bizarre because it's in a lot of ways you're like kind of farming because they have these gigantic pastures that they call food plots. So what they'll do is they'll plow the land and they'll grow a lot of clover, a lot of different types, alfalfa, different things that they know deers will eat. Deers? No, deer.
Deers.
And so then they set up a tree stand and whack them out.
Yeah, and I do it too. I mean, part of what I do in my land management service for people is to help their property become more wildlife friendly.
Right.
And one of the things that I try to push to people is that when we're doing things like timber stand improvement or invasive species management or providing wildlife food plots, we're planting wildlife food plots, just not deer food plots. And a lot of those guys, what I really want is deer.
Right. But you need it all.
Yeah, and what's good for deer is generally good for a whole host of wildlife. So it's a little bit different. But I know what you mean. I tend to name them afterwards, like that big one that big one that I killed. We called him the Standard. And because it's the standard by which all after this will be judged,
Right.
And but I mean that part of the relationship is
complicated.
Complicated, man. It is complicated.
But like all things involving life, they become complicated. It's not simple.
Yeah. Can I talk about Meateater a little bit?
Yeah, please.
So we shot starting this Thursday, there'll be 3 episodes in a row that were shot on the farm. The first one's actually Steve taking apart a couple of the deer that he finally shot a couple of deer on our place, and technically he'll say something else, but during our hunt he killed 2 deer, but he took them apart. So it's a really informative episode about the different kinds of cuts. How to just do it, and then the different kind of cuts and the methods for doing this stuff. Just really, I just watched it, and I just really impressed by it. And
he's amazing.
He really is.
He's so goddamn important, because in my mind on television, he is the most prominent intellectual voice for wild game management, wild game conservation, and for hunting. He's a true conservationist. He's a guy who really truly believes in public land hunting and goes way out of his way. I mean, he gets plenty of offers to hunt on private land. He prefers to hunt on public land, and he prefers to do his best to try to do whatever he can to help keep those lands public.
Yeah, and to promote that. And I think one of the things he likes about hunting on my place is that he knows that after the fact, we, like when you were there, and just like when this past year and every other year, there's a small group of people that hunt opening weekend. After that, I start letting other folks come in. I mean, it's our private land we're able to do, but it is the public's animal. And yeah, I put restrictions on folks. You can't shoot a buck, or, it's got to be this big or whatever it is. And he's applauded that in the past. And I that's really important to me, because I struggle with that a little bit. But the alternative isn't very good, where your land is just wide open to anybody who wants to come in on it.
No.
Experience that. No good.
Well, the problem is you can't really count on everybody to be ethical. You can't really count on everybody to take care of your land with reverence and dignity and the way you treat it.
Yeah,
or
it
even
takes one
safe.
or two.
Liability, you can't let every Yahoo,
Yes, very important, very important. Like the animal that got winged in the neck as he's going by, that the coyotes took apart. Who knows who shot that, and whether or not it was an ethical shot, or
just a bad shot.
Yeah,
and that's a big part of it. Well, so that's the first episode. The next 2 are 2 people that I hunted with us that I know and love, and we actually did a very similar thing to what you and Brian did. The first time Brittany and Helen hunted was in Montana. That was a year ago, and sort of like Steve did with you and Brian. Well, the next hunt was to bring them to our place. So they went from hiking and working hard and freezing and not seeing deer very much to freezing their ass off sitting in a blind, and the weather cooperated. It was not nearly as cold as it was.
It was super snowy, though. Coincidentally, I was in town the night before opening day, and I was so bummed out that I had scheduled it where I had to be in Colorado the next day, and I barely made it out of Madison.
Oh yeah, it's not like
I was in your town, man.
Yeah, I know you were. And
fucked up.
Well, that can't happen again.
Yeah, we were thinking about, Cal and I were thinking about flying in on Sunday, but schedules didn't permit.
Yeah, well, that'd have been great.
Next year.
Yeah, good. Cool. I'm counting on it.
Yeah,
now.
well, next year we're gonna manage it.
All right.
Callan and I we made a commitment to it. We were talking about it. We had so much fun 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't believe we missed it.
Well, I'll do what I can to make sure the weather is not as bad.
We don't mind shitty weather.
And people ask me, what was it like with those guys? They said, as
that's us.
Yeah, that's shit on a stick, which is still, I think, is still the #1 Meateater viewed YouTube video.
We had so much fun, man. It was so fun just hanging out, just laughing.
And there I am trying to interject some, conservation wisdom into it. Yeah.
It was so fun, man. So fun. That's one of the things about these experiences. The camaraderie is almost as important as the hunting itself. Just to have a bunch of guys hanging out, having a good time on your farm, and this, you have such a beautiful piece of land that we were talking about earlier, that we use the term driftless. And what that means is that this is the area where the glaciers passed over. They didn't go through this area. So you have beautiful rolling hills. And people think of Wisconsin as being like sort of a flat area, which it is in some spots.
Southern, yeah.
Yeah, but where you guys are at, it's amazing. It's fucking gorgeous.
And
so much wildlife, too. We saw turkeys. We
almost hit a turkey on our way to the airport. There's 3 of them, big ones.
Right.
And that would have messed up our day. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know if we'd have made it if we'd have hit one of
We
those
would have made it.
turkeys.
We would have made it. I would have knocked the glass out. We would have put our goggles on. We would have drilled. We would have made it. Don't worry about us. Don't worry
Again,
about us.
another part of the reason I didn't. I know I'll
We
get
got
there
the
if he
fire
was
in the
with me.
belly, dude. You said that.
Yeah.
Some
That's
ski
what I'm here
goggles on
for.
and drive
Yeah.
all the way. They can take out your windshield, though, right?
Big birds, man. So, so we had such a good time with that, and I think when Helen and Brittany, who were beginner hunters, they wanted to have that experience similar to what you and Brian had in Montana. Well, we don't want to take it easy on us because we're, whatever, women or whatever it happens to be, and I would not take it easy on either one of those two for any reason because they're just they're badass. Those are badass women.
Helen's addicted to jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's been doing jiu-jitsu with Anthony, with Tony Bourdain. They've been going fucking crazy. She takes it all the time. She's lost a ton of weight. She looks fantastic.
Yeah. So we did a very similar thing. Although this time, if you recall, when you guys were there, we had these blinds set up. They were like pop-up blinds and stuff. So Steve says, I think we have to have them do ground blinds. And you know how hard that was when we were inside those blinds? And they didn't really offer any heat or anything. So it made complete sense. Well, we built these beautiful blinds. The one that Steve built will be there after the apocalypse.
Oh, so you guys built them while you were there?
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
How
yeah,
did you do it? Just get some plywood and stuff?
Oh, no. Just with what was there. I mean, of course, Steve had to take some wire and baler twine and stuff along, and Brittany and I just went up where I was. It would just pull stuff together and kind of make a
How many days did you do this for?
The blinds?
Yeah.
Oh, a couple hours one afternoon.
Okay, so like you say, well, what was there? You mean like wood and
boards?
boards?
Branches from trees and that sort of stuff. Stuff that was just laying around.
What did you do with the one that I bought you?
Oh, that's up on, we call it shit on a stick, right up. So
that's what that area is called now?
Oh, yeah. We name them all,
Yeah.
right? So I put 4 round bales on end.
There you go.
And then I set it up on top of it. And
Nice.
the second day I went up there with my cameraman and sat. And it didn't make the show, thankfully. But I will admit on the air that I took a shot at a deer and just clean missed her. And I tell you, I spent a couple hours that afternoon because I just couldn't believe I missed.
Well, when we were there, I fell and fucked up my rifle scope, remember? And you actually helped me sight it back in because I didn't know. That was we had an issue with the scope being loose. When it was set in, whoever set it in, because we changed scopes. I had a Leopold and we put a Vortex on, and when we changed the scope, unfortunately it wasn't done right, and there's some steps weren't taken to secure it correctly, and just
Or
a
you
slight
fell on it
fall.
real hard.
How do you guys fall on it that hard, man? Because I was
But it
up
was
in a
off
second.
bad.
It was off bad.
Yeah.
Like more than a foot or close to a foot at 100 yards.
Well, I wish I had that excuse. I just clean missed that deer. It was a poke. I mean, but she was standing still.
How many yards?
About 400 yards. I mean, it was a
that's a
poke,
poke
but
for
I
sure.
had
That's a long fucking shot, man.
I clean missed her.
Now, do you use one of those iPhone calculator apps where like you have to like figure out like how far it is, the velocity of your gun? What are you shooting, a 30-06?
Actually, I had a Savage 300 Win Mag
Oh, Jesus
that
Christ!
they brought for me to.
Oh yeah, Savage is the sponsor of the show now, right?
Yes, that's right.
Excellent guns.
Oh, wonderful!
Savage arms are fantastic.
Wonderful. So
They have that special trigger too. Like where it's like the 1-step, 2-step process. So they have a very light trigger, but it won't go off accidentally.
no, and it was, the rifle was dead nuts.
Yeah.
And
By the way, I should say these guys, I know about this stuff because of Steve Rinella's podcast. It's called the Meateater podcast, which I talked him into doing, and now he's addicted to it too.
Yeah,
It's great.
It's great fun.
Doug's famous.
Great
I've
podcast.
done 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, and it's a great podcast. He's
Yeah.
so good at it.
And you had the guys from Vortex on there talking about the different things, and I learned a lot that day. So anyway, I clean missed, and I know I've talked about this before on maybe the podcast. I said I've never regretted a shot that I didn't take, and Steve was like, "Really?" Because he's incredulous about most of the things that I say, but
And most things everybody says.
well, he challenges you, that's for sure. But I took that shot, and I kind of regretted it because it was a long poke. It was a rifle that wasn't my rifle. I would have made that shot with my own, but right over her back. And she ducked in the whole thing, and I was sure I hit her. I went down there, and
Did she jump the gun? Like, did she drop down because
no,
she
when
heard the
it
gunfire?
zinged over her back. And we watched it, my cameraman and I kept watching it on the thing. And so I went right down to the spot where I marked exactly where the spot was. We had snow and everything. And I just clean missed. And it was a shot that in retrospect, I kind of wish I wouldn't have taken, especially with what was happening right then. Deer were starting to come to the field and all that. But anyway, and the point was it was from that blind that you sent me after that hunt. And so that's where it lives, is up there on top of the hill. It's a great spot. You'll love it when you see it.
Have you ever seen those bale blinds they look like a bale of hay, and you sneaky go inside them, and you're like, hey, come get some hay.
And we've actually, nothing happening here, just a bale of hay.
Just some hay.
Oh, we used to make some cozy blinds. My old man would, he'd take 3-4 round bales, and then you put a little cover on top, and you're in there toasty. I missed out on the biggest buck opportunity of my life, because my old man let me get out of chores in the morning. He said, you go out in that blind. He's like, me and your brother are going to kick one out of the swamp. 10 o'clock
so
rolls
cozy.
around, and I'm so cozy, and I'm passed out. And all of a sudden, I hear my old man. He's like, hey, what are you doing? I get up. I'm like, what? He's like, didn't you see that thing? I'm like, oh, it was too small. And I can't remember what he was calling. He had a name for it, and he's just like, that was,
Old Swampy.
That was a mega buck, and oh my God. And
You thought it was too small?
I didn't, I was sleeping.
It was
So I
too
was trying to
cozy.
make an excuse, my old man. I never lived that down with my old man.
Oh, that's so funny.
Because that was and we were watching that guy. You go out shining at night. You ever been shining?
No.
You need to do that sometime.
Is that like moonshining?
No, you go out with a
you're
spotlight.
You just
drive
drive
around
around
with
the
a
country
spotlight.
roads and shine the deer that are out in the fields.
And you
so
just
you
to
can-
get a
Just
gauge
kind of
of how many
monitor
are out
where they're
there?
at, and yeah.
Well, isn't that? Well, that's what people use for poaching, right? They
Yeah,
use-
yeah.
it's
but this
legal
isn't-
to do
yeah.
during certain
As long as you don't
hours,
have guns
can't
and you're
have a
not.
gun.
You can't do it during season.
but it's legal. Oh, you can't do it during the rifle season, during hunting season.
No,
No.
that's right. It ends at a certain date. Well, anyway, but what we did, because the other problem with those blinds, as you might remember, is you're pretty damn crowded in them.
Yeah.
And I actually sell a blind now called Shadow Hunter blind, which is a different.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah, yeah. And so I have a few of those around, and they are great, but we couldn't. It didn't make sense to do that. We had too many people
Filming,
and
yeah.
the filming thing. So we built cool blinds for 4 people. Two hunters and 2 cameramen.
But they weren't insulated then.
Oh, they sure weren't. And the day before, well, you were there. You know what happened. It was beautiful the day
Yeah.
before. We were out squirrel hunting in the morning. And these girls were shooting squirrels, man. Just wait till you see this. They did such a great job. They were so much fun, and they were just so
Such
into
good
it.
squirrel murderers.
Yeah. Anyway. And they, just like you and Brian, man, they gutted them, they cleaned them, they did the whole thing, to the point where I think Helen was maybe a little regretful that she had, they had 3 deer they broke down completely by themselves.
So did everybody shoot a deer? Was everybody successful?
Everybody but the guy who hosted it.
You?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy. You got a big one last year, right?
Yeah, I got a nice one last year, and I filled the freezer this year. Later on, the season goes on.
What are the? Okay, keep going. This. If you
Oh,
want.
I'm sorry. Well, so we did much the same. We set up, and it was really interesting. We had a Marine sniper trainer, Steve knows. He's from our area there. He came in and talked to us about shooting a little bit, and specifically for Helen and Brittany. And I'm just so proud of those two. They take it so seriously, as seriously as you and Brian did. Okay, you take it really seriously, and Brian always took it seriously when he needed to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And very into it, very respectful, wanting to know about it and all that. And I think it comes out in the episodes. I'm so close to it, I can't necessarily say, but we're very successful. Well, I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but yeah, we put some deer on the ground, and they did a terrific job. And I think it makes for compelling episodes as well.
That show's always awesome. What I wanted to ask you is, with all the wildlife that you have in your area, what are the seasons? I mean, I know you have more than one season of deer. So when does the season start? There's an archery season first?
Yeah, archery season starts
When's that?
September 15th, or the second Saturday in September.
And how many do you have a lot of archery hunters come out there?
Yeah, a lot. On our place? No. No, but I'd be happy to have one or 2.
I don't even like rifle hunting that much anymore.
Well, the thing about archery hunting for deer in our area is, it's a very well. But you've learned all this too. Hunting with Cam is that they've got to be closer, and I don't care how many of them there are.
Yeah,
they've got to be close, and they've got to come in. You're going to spend some time out there, and not much has been going on. But our archery season coincides with that first part of November, end of October, first part of November, where the pre-rut and rut is going on. So there's a lot of deer activity, and so there are. You can call and you can use scents and all that stuff, and they're coming in. And as you know, it's a completely different relationship with the animal. We actually have crossbow hunting. Now you can use a crossbow, not a longbow, and personally that's what I use.
That's cheating.
Yeah, whatever.
That's not archery. That's a shitty gun. It has a fucking scope on it.
Yeah, well, it sure does.
That's crazy. I mean, it's a magnification scope. You put the crosshair on, you pull the trigger, you can sit it on a rest, you can rest it down like you can. That is not archery, goddammit.
You can drink beer while you're doing that.
You can. You can shoot heroin, shoot one of those fucking things.
Well, you don't have to practice with them much.
Yeah, at all.
And it is certainly different than shooting a rifle. I'm comfortable at 50 or 60 yards
with a crossbow.
Yeah, and I know people can shoot further than that. And then ethically, I'm just not interested in that. But I am interested in. I don't have. Boy, if Cam was here, he'd drag me outside, or maybe you will. I say that bow hunting is for people who don't have enough to do, and that
it's true.
That it takes so much time to be an ethical bow hunter.
You're talking to a guy who shot 200 arrows today.
Yeah.
I shot all day today. I had a Hoyt representative come to my house, and we're shooting arrow. I have a whole 3D setup in my yard.
Yeah.
We're shooting a rubber elk all day today. My arms are sore.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be an asshole.
Well, you have to be committed to it.
Yes.
And the hardest thing for me during that time of the year on the farm is to sit in a tree and wait for a deer to come by. I've got all of these other things that I need to be doing that during that period of time. Not at my work and in Madison or something like that, but on that farm.
Yeah.
So I'm actually moving a little bit more towards during archery season is because I've not had a whole lot of archery season. We've had a couple of guys over the years, but to start to host people to come hunt because I'm going to be there anyway.
Right.
I might not be partaking in it myself.
Well, that's actually more attractive to me than even coming on an opening day. Now, how long does the archery season last?
Until the 1st of January.
Till the 1st of January, so it goes straight through?
Well, you can bow hunt during the gun season.
So I could have come down and bow hunted when those girls were shooting squirrels. I could have bow hunted.
Yes. And when they were shooting deer, you could have bow hunted. You just had to wear an orange jacket rather than camouflage.
Right, but before that, I could wear camo.
Yeah.
So I could archery hunt and then bail, and then take off right before.
Oh, that
it's so
end of October, first part of November, when the active rut is going on, that's the time.
What's the deal with the black powder? Is that still separate?
That's after
everything?
After the gun season. So then it's
Black power?
Black powder.
I know, I'm just kidding.
You got me. You got me, dude.
People don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about muzzle loaders.
Yeah.
For some strange fucking reason, it's okay to use a primitive, stupid weapon that you should never use in real life. You put a ball and you pack the powder in like you're living in the fucking 1800s, and you shoot this stupid thing. And here's the thing about muskets. This is the weird thing about them. They're real fucking accurate now, like real accurate to like 200 yards.
Yeah.
So they're basically a rifle that you can't make a good ethical follow-up shot on.
Yeah,
I don't like them.
The aerodynamics are
I get it.
Old.
Not only that, you shoot and this fucking giant cloud of smoke's in front of you. You don't know what happened. Boom! Where's the animal? I don't know. Did he hit it? Well, fucking I don't know.
Well, there'd be plenty of people who are you're gonna hear from about that.
I know. Listen. It is definitely more accurate and better than a bow. But my point is, use a fucking gun. Like, why? If you're shooting one of those things and it's accurate to several hundred yards, I know people that have shot a deer at 250 yards with a musket.
Wow.
So with a muzzle loader, when you're getting to that kind of a distance, like, what is that really?
Right.
You got a rifle. It's a shitty rifle.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a bow, if you shot something at 200 yards, you're basically closing your eyes and shooting up at the sun.
Yeah.
You know, who the fuck knows where that arrow's going? You're shooting 250 yards. But with a musket or a muzzle loader, you can put the crosshair on that thing. You can accurately judge, just like you can with a rifle. The problem is it takes you like 15 to 20 seconds to reload, as opposed to just going. If you want to make a follow-up shot with a rifle, Or there's a lot of people now that are hunting with semi-automatics.
Yeah.
Where you're going pang, pang, pang. You can shoot a deer 3 times in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Well, think about the black potters. You got to have your bayonet for the finish. That's
The Civil War.
boom, and then you're on the run.
Do you have to have a flint that hits the thing and makes the spark?
Johnny Reb. Yeah.
Yeah, and
They used
I
to
mean,
use
everybody
that.
has their preference. And
Yes.
I guess the thing on my family's farm, I'm the captain, and the captain gets to decide what happens.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, oh, this is the way it's going to be. I'm not absolute about anything. Over time, things kind of ebb and flow and change. And for me, well, I want to be out there in that first,
course.
that first part of November. I don't have to practice every day. I can't where I live. I don't have to become, and I readily admit it. I have an old Hoyt. And I like the bow, and I'll shoot it once in a while. But man, 20 yards is about it. Where I feel like I can make an ethical shot.
How dare you? We need to get you a new Hoyt. What year Hoyt do you have?
Oh man, I'd have to check with Shane, the guy I bought it from. I bought it from him used because he was upgrading.
So it's like in the 60s, like one of them bamboo ones. Fucking
I think it's like a mid 80s, maybe a late 80s.
laundry wheels, like for fucking laundry ropes.
Yeah.
Mid 80s for real?
Mid to late 80s. Yeah. Maybe it was early 90s. I'm sure I'll hear
Just
from
use
him.
a slingshot. Do you have any rocks you can throw? The fuck are you doing, man?
Spear. Just jumping on the tree.
It's just not my
I
my
get it.
priority. And I have a lot of respect for bow hunters who spend the time to become that proficient at it, and then you end up spending a lot of time whitetail hunting in our areas. There's guys who spend a lot of time doing that, and like I said, I just don't. I got more to do.
totally understand. I totally understand. And I'm totally busting your balls. It's not something that I would. I don't think anybody should do it. How about that? don't do it. Don't go bow hunting. It's too much work.
Yeah.
And it's too addictive. And forget about bow hunting. If I never hunt again for the rest of my life, archery is massively addictive. I love it. I'm shooting.
Cool.
I shoot every day. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
To me, it's a nice peaceful, like meditation type of a thing.
Do
but
they have like ranges out here?
yeah, there's
Cool.
a bunch. Yeah,
Cool.
there's a bunch. There's a big one off of the 210. So it's fucking huge, long distance range. But I think that it's a nice meditation. It's nice to do. But when it comes to compound bows, man, is really the difference between a bow from the 1980s and a modern, like 2016 Hoyt Defiant. You might as well be shooting a musket versus like a modern Savage Arms rifle. It's not that much difference.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of power that these things have now and the speed in which they shoot arrows and the accuracy, there's so much technology and engineering going into bows. It's really kind of amazing because it's one of the few pieces of hunting equipment that literally changes and improves every year.
And so I think about that when I hear these the bow hunting purist friends who are just cackling right now about you giving me shit about bow hunting, which is great. I mean, they're going to
Well,
love
there's
it.
a real purist that think I'm a pussy because I use a compound bow.
Well,
They use
right.
recurves.
Longbows.
Yeah.
Because they like not being accurate at all. They like fucking hoping they hit
Yeah.
shit. Boing!
Sorry, I
And they're
completely lost it.
getting mad at me right now. Fuck you, you pussy! Shoot a real bow like a man with your
Go out and
fingers.
make it yourself too.
Get some leather from the last animal you shot and wrap it around your fingers.
I actually think that Steve was talking about on this upcoming butchering one about how he was taking how they used to take the silver skin off of meat and they'd get the long strips of it, and that's what they made their bow strings out of.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, sinew. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
They used to dry it out
Yep.
and roll it and turn it into. I mean, did you see his thing from when he was in the jungle? Was it Borneo? Where the fuck did he go? Bolivia. When he
Yeah,
went to
Bolivia. Yeah.
God damn, that was an amazing show. 2-part
Yeah.
episode
Yeah.
where they went to Bolivia and the traditional bows those guys used to kill animals. They had these really heavy, really long arrows and these stick bows that they had made themselves. And he showed up with a Hoyt carbon spider.
Yeah.
And he's drilling. Yeah, there's the bows
Wow.
that these guys had.
Well, look at that arrow.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They had these really long, really heavy arrows. And notice how there's no fletchings on the arrow.
And he's got the follow-up arrow right there in his hand too.
Yeah. They keep them in their hands.
And I remember on this episode how he struggled to hit the fish because of how the water would reflect the arrow,
Yes.
deflect the arrow, I should
Yeah.
say. And these guys are just like nailing them one after another.
Well, it's not just that. It's not the water deflecting. It's the image.
Yeah.
It looks different. The fish is actually, it could be as much as 6 inches lower than what you think. Because the refraction in the water, you're looking down at almost like a lens. So it's like distorted where the actual fish is. So if you shot right at the fish, you would never hit it.
Yeah.
You have to shoot like below it. It's real weird.
You ever see the ones that people use in America? It's like a trident.
Yes.
It's like a big, there you're kind of
Yeah.
making up for that. You got
Yes.
some more.
We
some
have all
more-
these prongs.
Yeah.
And they shoot these arrows that like they
Or like a long spear when they're doing
The shotgun
sturgeon.
version of an
sturgeon.
arrow,
the
right?
shocker.
Spearing.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, we used to shoot carp up at the end of the lake, but they're because the water's real shallow, and they go up there and just raise hell, and their backs would be out of the water. So you weren't dealing with it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I used to live near Lake Charles in Boston, and there was an area by the waterfall where the carp would pool up. And it was incredible. I mean, you're looking at like these 20, 30-pound fish, and there's dozens of them just stacked together, and you see them on the surface of the water. But it's a junk fish to us, but a delicacy to people in the UK and in Asia. It's very interesting, like what
people
one person,
smoke it.
what one person decides is a good fish, and then and the problem was they were an invasive species in a lot of the North American rivers and lakes, and people don't like them for whatever silly reason. But they're a very good fish to eat, apparently, if you prepare it properly.
Yeah, you can say a lot of things. I mean, one of the things about grass-fed beef is, a lot of times it doesn't have the fat. So I mean, you got to know how to cook it. You can't overcook it.
Right, that's a big point.
Yeah,
That's
and
real-
I mean, you can say about any kind of meat. I mean, people
Well,
can
elk.
fuck up a really good piece of meat.
Well, especially a real lean piece of deer, venison, or
Yeah,
elk, or
natural
something like
stuff.
that. Moose,
Yeah.
same thing. I mean, you want to barely like singe the outside of it almost, and knowing like how to prepare it is a big part of the responsibility of hunting. You don't want to have this meat that you've got from this animal, and you have so much reverence for the death of this animal, and then you just prepare it like an asshole.
Yeah.
Like you have to put almost as much thought into the cooking. It's one of the things I really love about Ranello's show.
Yes, sir.
Like the episode that I watched last night about that Idaho mule deer that he shot, this enormous deer, it really focused on, at the end of it, how he prepared it. He showed you how to prepare it and how to cook it properly and how you can tell when it's done and all this different stuff. And he'll go through the butchering process, he'll go through the cooking process. And that's something a lot of these shows, they don't even touch, man. They get the deer, look at him, he's a real Iowa giant. And they take a picture with this animal, they show the antlers, look at his fourths and his fifths, and look at this brow tine is sticking up like this.
Or down in
And then
Texas,
they donated
where
it
they're in the
somewhere.
tower.
Yeah,
They're in the tower down in Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that, a lot of donating, And
I suppose that's a good thing, but
yes, it is a good thing. But there's also shows where they pretend, we're out here hunting. You got these fucking piles of corn out there that you're waiting for these animals to come to, and you're just kind of shooting at these spots where they're going to be.
isn't that that's always an interesting part of any discussion about hunting, about where are the ethical lines?
Yes.
Because guys will say, well, because baiting is illegal by us because of the chronic wasting disease. When you put a pile of corn out, they're exchanging saliva, and that's how it was spread.
That's interesting because, but you guys do have some deer farms, which is where people think the origins of chronic wasting disease are from.
Yeah, I heard an interesting discussion about that recently, and one of the things they talked about is that there were these protein blocks being put out, and that may have been they've never. There've been a few different ideas of where it came from, and one is. From the deer farms, another is these protein blocks that maybe got put out, and it's got animal byproduct in it, and maybe that's how it jumps species.
So is it like a prion thing? Is it something?
That's exactly what it is a prion. Yeah.
So it's similar to mad cow disease.
That's
then.
exactly right.
Oh, wow.
So would that have come? I don't know. And I've even heard it said that there are places where they were trying to improve the genetics of the deer herd, so they were bringing in, bigger bucks and releasing them. I don't have any proof of any of it. So those are just the things you hear.
That could be the case. That they are very concerned with people that release these animals from these farms out. But there's some fucking places, like I got contacted by this guy. Hey man, come hunt at my place. And then I looked at his Instagram page, and I'm like, that's not even a fucking deer.
It's a big cage.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to talk shit because I don't know this guy and I don't know why, but it's a high fence operation.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say what state it is, but they're barely deer. There are these deer that have these fucking bushes growing out of their heads.
Yeah.
If you see what their antlers look like, you're like, okay, that's not even real. Jamie, pull up this ridiculous antlers in a deer farm. They're growing these animals, and
I've seen it, man.
Trophy
well,
deal.
you call them trophies, but essentially they're manipulating the genetics of these animals so that they have all these antlers, so that these rich assholes can go and shoot these things in like this 100-acre fenced-in area where they're letting these animals out of their pens. Like, look at that.
Jeez.
What is that? What are we looking at here?
And you're
man?
killing that deer for one reason.
But just so you could put that on your wall.
And
but
I'm not interested.
I mean, I'm sure you could kill it and it would, taste just like a regular deer. I'm sure they're delicious and they probably. But look at this, man.
Jeez.
So they're growing these insane antlers by feeding them supplements and feeding them the shit that makes their like antler steroids that makes their antlers grow. They don't look like antlers, man. It looks like tumors.
Nuts. It looks like
like a
balls.
walnut.
Well, like Doug said, we were talking about this. It's criminal. I mean, Doug's very strongly opinionated about that. I mean, that's
what's criminal?
Weird.
Be careful what you say. Put
well,
at
no,
this fucking-
the
look at
caging
these
a man,
yeah.
and having a 300 acres isn't that big, and you got this 300-acre cage. That's not hunting. That's
but I said
fishing
earlier-
a barrel. That's fishing a barrel.
But I said earlier that on 40 acres, that's where that deer lived.
True.
But you know what? He could leave that 40 acres whenever
If he wants
wanted
to.
to.
And that's a
And
big
he wasn't
part.
coming to a bait pile or any of that kind
Right.
of stuff.
That's a
where
big
he
part
lived.
of ethics, right?
And I figured him out. Yeah, and I guess that's where I was getting to is where those lines are. Well, this is the hunting that I grew up with.
Right.
I've never hunted outside the Midwest. I've really only hunted outside of our farm twice.
Well, I have a friend who hunted in Texas at a ranch that is 10,000 acres fenced in. I'm like, well, as far as I'm concerned, those are wild animals.
Yeah.
10,000 acres?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a fucking animal on Earth that's going to travel that far other than a mule deer. There's not an animal on Earth that's going to migrate further than that in its lifetime. You essentially have this gigantic fenced-in habitat. And their idea about it is, look, we can manage the wildlife, sustainable wildlife inside. We're not feeding them anything. They live off this land, but we're just keeping people out. We're not keeping the animals in. We're keeping people out. I'm like, okay, I can
line
buy
in a
that.
song, I think, yeah.
Is that a line in the
A
song?
line in a song, put up this
Kind of
fence to
fucking
keep
music
me
are
out
you
or
listening?
keep
Sing
all
it.
the nature in.
Oh,
Keep Mother Nature in.
if God was here, he'd tell it to your face. Man, you're some kind of sinner.
That's hippies, though. That's hippies who want to fucking get on your land, by the
You
way.
ever hear that
Yeah.
that bit where they're like the part about the sign? The sign said, "Anybody caught trespassing will be shot on sight." It's like a radio bit.
Right.
And they
Yeah.
and then it ends. That's the end of the song.
It's
That's the point.
complicated business. It's
It
all
is.
a complicated business, and these ethical lines are difficult. It's something that you have to think about. It's something you have to talk about,
Yeah.
and you got to be willing to change your mind sometimes too.
Well, baiting bears is a big one.
Ah.
Baiting bears is a big one because there's a lot of places where the only way, especially in the spring, you're ever going to kill a bear is if you bait. So they have to control the population of these bears because the bears are killing moose, they're killing calves, they're killing fawns from deer, they're killing all sorts of things, and they're killing cubs, they're killing each other. I mean, the bears are killing machines. So when they have these environments where they have to control the population, they allow baiting. The reason why they allow baiting is to make a successful hunt. And recently, I think in Maine it was, I don't know if they passed it, but they were trying to pass no baiting on bears. And the reason why they were doing it is because anti-hunting people were trying to stop people from hunting bears. So the way they would essentially make a hunt completely ineffective was saying no baiting. So because as soon as you can't bait, you can't find them.
you're not going to have any success, and you don't have any
You don't
chance
find
for
them.
any success. Yeah, no, I get
I have
it.
friends who live in Michigan, and they were telling me, listen, man, you could go a fucking decade without seeing a bear in the woods. Meanwhile, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
You just don't find them. You go near them, they hear a snapping twig, like,
They're
fuck this
gone.
guy.
Yeah.
And they walk so quiet.
Those pads.
It's one of the weirdest thing about bear hunting is when you're out there and you're waiting, they walk, like you stand by like a trail where you know they head by, you'll see one before you hear it. Like they'll just be right there. You're like, oh shit, he's right there. They're just so goddamn quiet.
Amazing that such a big animal could be so quiet.
With slippers on their feet. They have slippers.
Like moccasins.
Yeah, I mean the pads. Have you ever touched a bear's
yeah,
pads?
yeah.
It's weird, man,
Yeah.
and it's designed to creep up on shit. You know, I mean, that's why cats have them too. They have those pads at the bottom of their feet. Why don't they have hooves? Wouldn't hooves be better? Yeah, well, hooves make too much noise. Yeah. You can't be jacking shit with all that noise. So they come creeping up on you, but they're like little ghosts, man. Weird. Cats and bears, they're ghosts. Pad slipper wearing fucking ghosts. No.
Oh, good stuff.
Listen, I think we're done. I think we should wrap this pitch up, bring it home. This was a lot of fun, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
hey,
Nate.
I appreciate the opportunity,
Doug.
man.
I would say a little bit about, thank you very much. And to steal a line from Ray Wiley Hubbard, the days I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations are really good days. And today is about as good a day as you could get.
Well, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys flying out here and doing this. And I'm glad we could have this conversation and, you know, get your perspective on things. Because I think a lot of people have, you know.
Listeners, continue the discussion, man. I mean, you never stop learning.
That's what it's all about, really. I mean, this is all about just trying to figure out other people's perspectives.
Work together.
Work together, man. Okay, man. Just stay the fuck off Doug's land, you hippies.
Yeah.
All right,
thank
really
you, friends. Nice. We'll be back tomorrow with the great Boss Rutan and Mauro Ronaldo. Should be a lot of fun. And then on Friday, Robin Black, my pal Robin. And then on Sunday night, Fight Companion. All right, so we'll see you soon. Much love, friends.
That was cool.